This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 26. I'm your host, Steve, at Fantasy Ladder. This podcast is brought to you guys by the IDP Guys Podcast Network. So if you like this, make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel so you can watch this show and all the other great content provided by the IDP Guys. Just wanted to give a little shout out to the IDP Guys newsletter. Please subscribe to that. It is free. It'll come into your inbox every single Wednesday morning, full of great information. Again, check it out and check out the IDP Guys website as well. Tons of articles covering offense and defense side of the ball, dynasty redraft, the whole 9 yards. So can't speak enough about it, not just because I am a writer and a content creator for it, but definitely want to give a shout out to the mothership. But here we are, NFL Week 2. Week 1 was wild, so we're going to recap that a little bit. I'm going to bring a guest on, and we're going to go through all of the Week 2 matchups. So we're going to bring him on right now. We have Christian Welch. You can find him on Twitter at Evil Empire FF. He is a writer for Fantasy Pros, and he's a podcast host of the Devy Authority with the Fantasy Authority Network. Christian, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Steve. I feel like this has been a long time coming, so I can't be any more excited than to be on the mic with you tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, what's a really fun fact about us is that we are birthday buddies, not just the same day, but also the same day and year. So it is just a very odd occurrence to not only find someone that you are friendly with just in the universe of the internet, Twitter, fantasy football Twitter, but someone who shares the exact day of your birth is just remarkable. And obviously we've hit it off just naturally. Then that just took it to another level. So it's great to have you on, buddy.
Yeah, man. Glad to be. I honestly forgot about that till you just brought that up. Like when we first started talking, that was like, oh man, that's my birthday buddy there. But after more and more talking to you over the years, it's just become fantasy football. That's crazy, man. I totally remember that, and that was just nuts when we figured that out.
That's
But
right.
yeah, man, glad to be here. I love your show.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So, couple things that I want to know about a lot of the guests that are coming on the show. Just a couple things. One, how many leagues are you playing in? This will just kind of cue the audience into just exactly what we're dealing with as far as experience goes and what's happening week to week with you. So, how many leagues are you playing in? And generally speaking, what is your Sunday morning routine like from a lineup setting standpoint?
Well, Steve, I'm playing in 44 leagues, which can make my Sunday mornings pretty nuts.
Woo.
But I'm a crazy, obviously playing in 44 leagues, so it's not like I'm just setting my lineups on Sunday morning. I'm looking at it every day throughout the week. I'm the guy in the redraft leagues waking up at 3:30 in the morning to try to get the first freebies of the day. So I mean, it's probably a little bit of a problem, but I just can't turn it off, Steve. So that's how I ended up becoming more of a portfolio player after I was got into my first dynasty league. I was like, man, there's some players that I want that I don't have on this team. Man, if only I had another team, right? And then I got another team, and it just kept spiraling from there. And as I kept growing my portfolio, I realized, like, man, the more teams I have, the better of a player I'm becoming, because I'm becoming less emotional, right? Like, I no longer have to have my guy, right? Like, I have my guy somewhere, right? So
1000%.
all of
Yep.
my decisions just became calculated decisions. I'm going to make the better choice every single time, and eventually it's going to, grow. And after time, you've got some real powerhouse teams. So, my craving for wanting more and wanting exposure to every player led me to that, like, oh man, this is going to make me a more disciplined player, and I'm really going to have a good process here. And over the years, just growing and growing it, it's become a pretty profitable endeavor for me. And now it's like, man, I'm adding, 5 to 10 leagues every year, and here I am close to 50. But like I said, it's a profitable journey for me. It's something I love doing. And, like I said, Sunday morning's kind of a mess, but I know that going into it. Like, for example, this past week, there was the couple guys that were up in the air. You had George Kittle, Dobbins, Ertz. There was a couple guys that I knew I had to like watch up until kickoff. But that's where I use some tools, right? Like, I need to be able to quickly go in here and say, okay, where do I have Kittle rostered, right? These are the leagues where I need to kind of be ahead of it on that lineup decision, whether that's going ahead and putting in the backup player and going to put Kittle in if he is playing, or the other way around, So Sunday mornings could be hectic, but I'm pretty organized. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you see my spreadsheets I put out there, right? I am very detail oriented with it. I feel once you're putting like serious money into gambling, which is, what we're doing here, You need to be calculated with it, make sure you're not hurting yourself, personally because of your hobby. So for me, like I said, fortunately, it's been something that's been profitable for me, but a lot of that goes into the discipline and the organization with it for me.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm one who will, just like you, just kind of check it constantly throughout the week. If I have like a little downtime here, well, the first thing I'm going to pull up is Sleeper, or whatever, or MFL or wherever you're playing. But I had everything pretty well down pat going into Sunday. I did have a couple leagues where I had Ertz. So I was thinking, like, I set an alarm, like you got to come up with a system, right? I set an alarm for like 3:45, just like to remind myself, like, okay, so when these late game inactives are announced, that's when I need to switch some of these guys out, or at least have it on my radar to get ready for that. Now, fortunately, Ertz was active, so I already had him in that spot, so I didn't have to touch him. And then he got a touchdown, so that was like just it was perfect. So crisis averted, but I was at least prepared. I had the two leagues written down, and the moves I was going to make. I had it all ready to go. But I don't know if I would have taken that step to put those steps into action if I didn't see your handwritten um, 2 full pages worth of how many leagues you're rooting for this guy in and how many leagues you're not rooting for this guy in. That was fascinating to see. Like, that was really funny. It was
Yeah,
like
and
a
that's
diner menu of things you're hoping happens and not happens,
yeah, and that's one of the criticisms I get when people are like, "Man, don't you miss like rooting for the guy on your team?" And yeah, I mean that's something you do want to do. Like if I'm watching a game that's not one of my teams, like say I'm watching like a Jags Jets, snooze fest, I need to know who I'm pulling for in that game, right? As a football
Oh, yeah.
fan, I need some juice going. So, and that's the thing in 44 leagues, like I may have 15 T Higgins in there, but what if I'm playing against 12 T Higgins, right? Then I'm only +3 on T Higgins, right? What if I've got a guy in that game that I'm +9 on, right? Like I'm wanting the touchdown to go to that guy, right? So it's not as easy as just looking at my exposure each week because you never know on your opponent's end what they've got. So like at 44, like there's a large chance that if I didn't do that, I could be excited about a touchdown that's actually hurting me in more leagues than it's helping me, right? So for me, and like I said, it's therapeutic for me, Steve. Most people would look at that as, man, I've got to write down all this stuff. This is going to suck. When I sit down to do that and I've got all my tabs up and I'm like, once I get to the consolidation part and I'm like, man, like what have I netted here, right? Am I netting a plus, 8 Higgins or something? It's cool to me to look at that and be like, all right, so when I'm watching the Bengals game, I need the passing touchdowns to go to Higgins, not Chase. When I'm watching this game, I really need, Melvin Gordon to score the goal line touchdown, not Javonte Williams, right? So like it helps me as I'm watching the games to know what to pull for to where I'm not like, okay, just because I have a high exposure to this guy, I'm happy he scored, but oh crap, I'm playing against 19 of him this week. That actually hurt me more than it helped me. So for me, like I said, I enjoy it. It's therapeutic, and it makes my rooting interest clear. And it's funny when I posted that, Steve. We talked a little bit before we got on about as you grow on Twitter, there's always somebody going to come in there to try to rain on your parade. I posted that manual, just like, man, I always post my spreadsheet, but I kind of want to show people like the other parts of this portfolio journey, right? Like, what's this guy doing on Sunday morning? And one guy's like, you may need to check out this thing called Microsoft Excel. And I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I should check that out, right? But I personally didn't see how a spreadsheet would really help with that, right? Like I'm just trying to scribble out like, okay, who am I pulling for today? Right. I'd delete that spreadsheet the second I was done with it. And honestly, I can scribble that stuff faster than I can create a sheet and all that. So I was just like, man, it's always something, but
that's so funny.
Yeah.
This thing called Excel. Oh, yeah, because I actually prefer like handwritten notes myself. Like that, it just kind of like the process of doing it like sticks in my brain a little bit better rather than just like staring at a screen. I don't know, but the one thing you said very early on is that it takes the emotions out of the decision making process, which is exactly the point you want to get to, because you just want to enjoy it, you want to have fun, but you don't want to live and die like with every single decision, especially if you're playing in so many leagues. Like it is just like, well, if this happens, this happens. If that happens, that happens. Like it really takes that heartache and that whatever out of it, So I think that is a very good point to get to. And that just kind of brings us to what this particular show is about. We want to set the optimal lineup, going through each of the matchups in our teams, but we don't want to get too worked up or too emotional about it. We just want to look at the information that's in front of us and make the best decisions possible based on what the NFL is showing us. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And kind of like we talked about a little bit off air, like with those week to week decisions, if you are in the portfolio realm, which I would consider, I mean, I guess anything over 10 leagues, you're kind of getting there. But like if you're in 20 plus leagues, I mean, you're getting to a point here to where, I mean, you may be making a decision on your lineup for a different reason than a matchup, right? Like,
yeah,
so back to the Ertz situation for this week, right? I have a pretty good exposure to Ertz. I think I've got like 8 of them out there. If he was playing, like we've all seen the guy that's questionable all week play, and then he's a decoy all game, right?
yep.
I was like, if I'm going to play 8 Ertzes, that's kind of risky, right? So I didn't want to start all 8 of my Ertzes, right? Now, this decision particularly went to bite me, but this shows you kind of the thought process on it. There was one league where I had Cole Kmet, and I was like, okay, I don't have Cole Kmet projected much lower than Ertz this week. Just to hedge on Ertz being a decoy, I'm going to start a Kmet over Ertz here, right? So for me, it's an exposure start-sit decision rather than, okay, who do I think is going to score more points today? Because for me, I didn't want to potentially have that 0 for 8 on Ertz being a decoy. So I was like, I'll take, 1 or 2 less points from Kmet to potentially not have that 0, right? So for me, those decisions are often driven by exposure rather than matchup, if that makes sense.
1,000%. Yeah, a really good example of that just this last week. I have Michael Thomas of the Saints on one very strong contending team, and I have him in like a redraft. Just like throw him in. Who cares? Where in the contending team, I'm much more calculated about, because I really want to win in this particular league, right? So in that league, I bench him. In the other league that I just didn't like care as much for, I started him. And the decision for me to bench Michael Thomas in that contending league literally resulted in a loss because I was weighing Devonta Smith and Michael Thomas. All we knew about Michael Thomas all summer was, you know, he's not with the team. Then he's with the team. Then he's got a hamstring. Is he going to be 100%? And then he gets 2 touchdowns, 6 catches and 50 some yards. Literally the point total that Michael Thomas got and Devonta Smith got, which of course was 0, would have given me a win. So that one, like, just I couldn't get over it. Like, again, it's all like 2020 vision at that point, right? It's all like it's retrospect, right? So it is what it is. But these decisions can, really factor in a brutal way. But to me, it was kind of like, well, still a little risk there because he very well could have been a decoy, and it could have just been like Chris Olave and Jarvis, whatever. So it's in the past. It is what it is. But that's a situation where kind of wish I had that one back if I was a little bit more aggressive. But I just figured, well, Devonta Smith, he'll get a decent day. And even going up against Detroit, whatever. But anyway,
did he end up fully goose egging?
Yeah. No catches on only 4 targets, and then AJ Brown gets like 12 catches and just goes nuts. You know what I mean?
Brown looked great. You got to be excited as an Eagles fan how that looks. That looked great.
Phenomenal. I mean, it was such a joy to watch as an Eagles fan, and then you realize like the lineups you had Smith in, not so great, but yeah,
Are you telling me he looked better than Rager and Arcega-Whiteside out there?
Just a little bit. Yeah, okay. A little bit. Yeah. No, thank. It's just amazing. Both of them are off the team, and well, I mean, I don't think Whiteside is even on a roster at this point because he was on the Seahawks, and then they cut him in the final round of cuts, I think it was. But yeah, so very, very excited for AJ Brown, but it's just the thing about fandom. It's like you get your hopes up too high, and then it all comes crashing down if they disappoint, But yeah, no, but it looked great. A really strong start to the season. But yeah, so we're just gonna recap week 1 a little bit here. I just wanted to mention some of the injuries off the top. Obviously, Najee Harris, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, who will not be suiting up for this Thursday night game. Dak Prescott, Elijah Mitchell, Chris Godwin, who is unlikely to play, I believe, but Dak and Elijah Mitchell will be out for approximately eight weeks apiece. Yeah, so anything that you took away out of the week 1 round of games? Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the Dak injury is obviously the one screaming off the page here because, I mean, we just saw this 2 years ago, right? And like in the dynasty spaces, I mean, people that lost Dak that early in the year that planned on contending, looking back at some of the trades that were made after that, were crazy looking back now, right? So I'm curious to see what's going to happen this week. We obviously saw, if you play in dynasty leagues, the Cooper Rush Fab Fest today, right? Him going for $100 to $300 a fab. But we'll see if those people are really going to roll out Cooper Rush for 8 straight weeks, right? I think we're going to see some trades happening. But that's my big takeaway. As I mean, the Cowboys lost their franchise quarterback. It doesn't seem like they're going to make any moves or anything there. So you have to be doing cartwheels as an Eagles fan, Steve. This is a chance for you guys to really, take a hold of that division and take advantage of the Cowboys being down like this, but it's just really unfortunate that it's, twice now in 3 years for Dak. His dynasty value is a subject all in itself, but that has to be the biggest takeaway from week one. It just seems like the Mitchell thing doesn't seem surprising, Steve, because it's a 49ers running back going down to injury. It almost seemed inevitable that this was going to happen in week one. It's just what always happens. The other 3 guys doesn't seem like it's too serious. We know Allen's out this week because the game's on Thursday. Right. Higgins looks like a concussion, typically 1 week, but I'm hearing pretty good reports on him. Seems like there's a chance he goes, but I had pretty much taken him out of all my lineups already. Najee Harris is adamant he's playing. Godwin, I'm more worried about of that list that you went there because he's obviously coming off the big injury, and that's pretty quick to go ahead and be back on the shelf. So, but yeah, Dak for me is the big story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some other things that I found to be very interesting in week one was that it was a big week for first-year head coaches. Yeah, you had a win with the Giants, the Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Bears. And it's funny, on the sheet, I just wrote down the Broncos because I made the sheet like before the Monday night game, just assuming the Broncos had to have won this game. But Nathaniel Hackett could not get it done. But Brian Dable of the Giants, Mike McDaniel of the Dolphins, Kevin O'Connell of the Vikings, Dennis Allen of the Saints, and Matt Eberflus of the Bears got it done. Nathaniel Hackett did not get it done. That to me was just wild in general because of Geno Smith's play, and then just the last 2 minutes of the game, just the absolute meltdown and clock management was just shocking. Oh my word!
It's unbelievable, Steve. Like I think it was a prime time. It's Monday Night Football, man. Everybody's watching that, right? I don't know if you've watched Peyton Manning's reaction to it.
I did see
Peyton
that.
Manning is watching this, and obviously Peyton Manning is a brainiac of offensive football, right? Yep. Like Peyton Manning's face, the disgust on what was happening is just priceless, right? And then Eli, of course, is there looking confused, just like, Peyton, this isn't good, is it? Right? Like, I don't think what they're doing is good here. What do you think, Peyton? Peyton is just like hands in his face, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he was calling for a timeout like 8 seconds ago. Yeah.
Yeah, like I get, you're under the bright lights at your first game, but like if you're a Broncos fan, like I don't know how good you're feeling about that hire after seeing that. Well, that would be a pretty bad taste in my mouth on Hackett. Now Daboll, on the other hand, going for 2, baby, feeding Saquon. That guy's getting jacked up, man, chest bumping people, right? Like I got a good vibe on him, right? Like to me, he seemed like he's going to make an impact. Dennis Allen, I mean, he was playing the Falcons, Steve. I literally, like, people need to know this by now, okay? Fourth quarter, I made some money on that game, right? The Falcons got a big lead. What do you know? Falcons often have a big lead, right? Here comes the fourth quarter. I'm checking my DraftKings sportsbook. Oh, I can get the Saints plus 11 against the Falcons in the fourth quarter. Yes, please, right? So it's like clockwork. If you guys are not betting against the Falcons in the fourth quarter every week, you're making a mistake. So no praise coming from Dennis Allen just yet. I mean, he was the Falcons collapsed in the fourth quarter, Steve. Is what we do. So
there you go. Yeah, I didn't want to rub it in because I know you are a Falcons fan, but I just found it very fascinating that many first year head coaches. Well, at least I know that Dennis Allen had been a head coach for a short stint there with the Raiders, but just very fascinating. It's like a guy's debut doesn't always go as planned, but I just found that found that to be very fascinating. Some other things I was looking for in week one was so some of the teams running back usage. So some of the teams I wanted to highlight were the Jets, the Jaguars, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Packers. So the Eagles, Miles Sanders handled 52% of the snaps, actually looked fantastic, scored a touchdown, which he didn't do all of last year. So some of the splits to me were very interesting. Really notable to me what was the Jaguars. I was not anticipating James Robinson to look or play as much as as well or as much as he did. So Etn had 51% of the snaps. James Robinson 49% of the snaps, and absolutely took full advantage of every opportunity he had. 6 yards per carry. We don't always love that as a stat necessarily, but he looked fantastic. He got the job done. Elliott and Pollard on the Cowboys. Elliott was at 58% snaps, and Pollard was at 55% snaps. I think this kind of thing you would have been anticipating a little bit more, especially with how ugly that Sunday night game got. So that wasn't all that shocking per se. Another one that was a little bit shocking to me was the one that was shocking actually was the Jets usage. Michael Carter coming in with 60% snaps and Breece Hall at 45% snaps. So I wonder, if that was more of like a game flow situation because they just were like down the whole game against the Ravens, and obviously Michael Carter's still a good pass catching back. And then the Packers, just want to touch on this here. AJ Dillon at 51% of the snaps and Aaron Jones at 61% of the snaps. So I'm a big Aaron Jones guy. You could have predicted an increase in AJ Dillon's usage this season just with the loss of personnel there in the Green Bay offense. Anything of those groups stick out to you?
Yeah, so like you said, the Jags is the one that's like the biggest eye opener to me because
Yep.
Robinson coming off the Achilles, ETN's coming back like pretty healthy. What he was fully recovered from. After what we saw from Cam Akers on the opening game of the year, that kind of fizzled the Achilles isn't death crowd. Like, oh man, this was pretty rough. And then James Robinson just out of nowhere, looks awesome. So
Yeah.
The Achilles thing seems still up in the air. James Robinson wasn't going to let it die just yet. And honestly, I don't think ETN looked that great either. So, I still want ETN out of the backfield. Like, if they got the investment in him, he's the younger, higher profile player. But I mean, James Robinson just continues to get the job done in the NFL. Maybe he's the new Chris Carson, Steve, right? Maybe he's just this unsexy, undrafted guy that no matter what is just going to keep getting it done. Maybe we'll, look up 3 years from now and we're finally giving James Robinson the cred that he deserves. The Packers don't bother me at all. Like I said, I want both of those guys everywhere. The receiving core there is just so terrible. They have no choice but to rely on those two backs there. So I want both of them. You said something. Miles Sanders actually looked good. I think Miles Sanders always looks good. The
Right.
fact that the Eagles' previous regimes have not wanted to give him the ball whatsoever while he's looking
Shocking,
pretty
right?
good out there, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, Miles Sanders is a guy who's lost so much dynasty stock, and I don't feel it's because he's ever looked bad on the field, right? Like, he's a guy I feel like he's always played well when he's plays. It's just, the Eagles regime did not like him, didn't want to give him the ball. If the Eagles are going to give him the ball, I want Sanders, right? I'm not really scared off by Boston Scott. Kenneth Gainwell had what, five carries. I don't think with as much as Jalen Hurts is running the ball and was with as good as Sanders looked and this staff's willingness to give him the ball, I really think Sanders is the guy you want here, and the other guys are, kind of filling the back of your bench.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting about ETN and James Robinson. Like, ETN had the fumble in the at the goal line, I believe it was, or in the red zone is one of those. There's like a big swing, and then he dropped a pass that very well could have been a touchdown. Like, James Robinson, at the end of the day, like, what is now sexy to us is points. You know what I mean? So it's just so that was a really alarming shift for me because I was as fired up about a player as one could be for Travis Etienne, and that's not really a unique position. A lot of people have been very excited about Etienne, and then James Robinson almost out of nowhere. I was more skeptical because of the Achilles issue, but man, if he's looking like this, he's looking like a guy you can start every single week. But to your point, you said earlier, I would still just you don't want to disregard the prospect profile of what ETN brings to the table. You don't want to just disregard these things just because of 1 week. It's a really interesting balance that we hold now of not overreacting, not underreacting, but just kind of keeping and staying course, right? So I would agree with you. I think sticking with ETN, but definitely some cold water was definitely poured on it for sure. Some interesting, unforeseen strong performances of week one. I'm just wondering if these are repeatable or if these are just merely like mirages, right? So the one that the one that instantly comes to mind was Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. Absolutely destroys with the opportunities he was given. Curtis Samuel of the Commanders and Robbie Anderson, who scored another long touchdown, hadn't done that for a couple of seasons here. So um, what are your thoughts on these guys? I think it's fair to say that Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, because he was often like in redraft, was drafted as like a flex play. I think he's a very safe flex play at this point, even an RB2. Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson are probably just waiver ads at this point. Did they show enough to you that you would be able to get them in a starting lineup at this point, or just kind of hold at the end of the bench?
Yeah, well, for me, Edwards-Hilaire, like you said, we drafted him as a flex play. So I feel like if you're a drafter of CEH, you feel vindicated, you feel good, right? Like, he
Yep.
scored what, 2 touchdowns. You're feeling good about drafting him in the flex when he was getting a lot of hate this offseason, right? So I don't feel he like increases his stock or anything, but I feel if you drafted him, you feel warm and fuzzy inside, like you made the right decision. The other 2 guys surprised me a lot more, right? Like Clyde Edwards-Hilaire is the starting running back for the Chiefs, so it's not a surprise he got in the end zone to me. Curtis Samuel, like we almost forgot he existed, right? Like he was always that guy that like never quite figured it out in Carolina. He signs that huge deal in Washington, then literally misses like the entire season after signing there, and we forget he's there. And then it's like, hey guys, remember that I exist. Here I am, absolutely killing it on opening day. But it feels like Sammy Watkins to me, Steve. They've got Terry McLaurin there. They've got Johann Dodson, your boy from Penn State, who showed out and has first round draft capital. Antonio Gibson looked great catching the ball, and it seems like Brian Robinson's going to be back soon. I still think Logan Thomas can be, useful this year. I just don't see Curtis Samuel having the opportunity. Robbie Anderson, on the other hand, though, Steve, the Panthers have a pretty poor wide receiving corps behind DJ Moore. I'm pretty upset that Terrace Marshall didn't pan out. I really love his college profile. Like he's one of those to me. It's like, man, this just doesn't match up. Like it's a really good profile. He's this bad, right? Like it's fine. He's not great, but the fact that he's been this bad is like, it's a head scratcher for me. But Anderson legitimately is the wide receiver 2 there and should be rostered, right? Like he is now a flex play as the bona fide number 2 there in Carolina. And it's not going to feel good, Steve, but not everyone has a killer roster, right? If you're a middling team, you're struggling with that last flex spot, Robbie Anderson may be one of the safer options on your waiver wire. So CEH, like I said, status neutral. You feel good about it if you drafted him. If you didn't, you're not going to acquire him. Curtis Samuel's fool's gold, and Robbie Anderson, you should roster him.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. All right, so we are going to go through each of the matchups one by one, just kind of touch on the startable players, and then kind of work through some guys who we're not quite sure of just yet. This is an interesting week, actually, because there are 4 primetime games. You got the Thursday night game, you got the Sunday night game, but then there's 2 Monday night games. So we're going to start with those. We're going to blend in some listener start sit questions, then go through the early Sunday slate, blend in some more listener questions, and then the late Sunday slate. So let's start it off with Thursday night football. You have the Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. No Keenan Allen, as we had mentioned before. You're obviously are starting Mahomes. You're obviously starting Justin Herbert. Austin Eckler had a disappointing week 1. You're not getting cute. You're still going to play him. Let's see who are we looking at here. Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. But Mike Williams absolutely gets a bit of a bump up this week. So
I'm week last week.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, no, a very down week. That game actually did disappoint a little bit, just with how the game went at the end of the season last year between the Raiders and the Chargers. You used to expect like big fireworks with these AFC West matchups, but we have another one here on Thursday nights. Some of the borderline guys here, Josh Palmer, he gets a big boost up. If he wasn't rostered in like your shallow redraft leagues, he's probably has been added. How would you feel with him in a starting lineup this week?
I mean, Palmer's a guy I love. He went to Tennessee, baby. So Vol for life right there. So much love to Josh Palmer. But I'm not excited to put him in a lineup, right? Like in Dynasty, I'm cool rostering him, but I just don't feel he's seized that next man up after Allen and Williams like he's had the opportunities to. He's probably the best option there. We saw DeAndre Carter kind of show out this past week, but I do think Palmer's a better option than him. But he's not somebody that I'm excited about. Like I can probably get Robbie Anderson off the waiver wire as well. I'm more excited to put Anderson in my lineup than Palmer. But the Chargers are an offense we all want a piece of, right? And if he's going to fit into that Keenan Allen role at all, that's something we need to take note of. But if I'm having to pick right now, Steve, I'm not choosing him, but I won't be surprised if he goes out and has a productive week. And if Allen misses time, we're like, oh man, this guy's going to, feast on some targets here in this great offense. But I'm a little gun shy on him right now.
Gotcha. Now on the Chiefs side, Travis Kelce, obvious start. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think had a pretty encouraging first week as a Chief. I'd be happy to have him in a starting lineup. I'm not sure if there's anyone else on the Chiefs that I would particularly feel comfortable starting outside of Mahomes, CEH, Juju, and Kelce. Now the Chargers, another borderline one is Gerald Everett, who had a touchdown in week 1. If you're kind of streaming tight ends, I think he could be a solid option still here on Thursday night. Thoughts on Gerald Everett?
Yeah, I was going to bring up Everett if you didn't get to him. Like,
Perfect.
if you don't have one of those top tier tight ends, you're probably streaming tight ends. And Gerald Everett is just one of those candidates. It's like jumping off the page, right? He's the starting tight end on an offense that we love in the Chargers, and he had a productive week 1, right? And if you play Dynasty, which I know you do, Steve, Everett's one of these guys we've been waiting on for years, right? He's one of those athletic freaks that we thought was going to emerge on the Rams, and went to the Seahawks. It didn't happen. It seems like this could finally be it, Steve. So he's one of those, if you're, one of these guys that's held on to him for years, you're pretty excited about it. I thought the week 1 was encouraging. I do believe in the talent on him and the opportunities there, especially with Allen out. So.
Yeah, he's far and away the best tight end that has been in the Chargers offense since Herbert's been around. Just the older years of Jared Cook, and then whatever they had last year with Donald Parham, and then some other guys. Phenomenal upgrade to the offense. He gets a little boost as well with no Keenan Allen. So yeah, I'm glad you brought him up too. So we're gonna move now to the Sunday night football game. Got the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. Bears had the big win in week 1. Packers had the big loss in week 1. So now they're back in Green Bay. Traditionally, Aaron Rodgers has done phenomenally well against the Bears. So we like both of the Packers running backs, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, definitely starting both of them. Robert Tonyan, to me, he's not exactly a startable tight end option at this point. Would you agree, or do you feel the same?
I feel like he's close to Gerald Everett. I'd rather play Everett,
Okay.
but to me, they're in that like streamable tier, right? To where they're in
Gotcha.
situations that could suggest strong volume. But they're not the greatest players in the world. I feel like those guys are neck and neck. Pick your cup of tea there between those two.
From what you saw in week 1 and just the very poor wide receiver core, at least performance of week 1, where you at with Aaron Rodgers? Is he a starting option, or obviously he's a tremendous player in real life, but is he a trustable fantasy asset for
Well, in a
week
super
2?
flex league, you're obviously rolling him out every week, but in a single quarterback league, like especially in like redraft formats, right? Like I feel like he
Yeah.
was going like QB 13-ish, right? Him and Derek Carr were kind of that back end of the starters, right?
Right.
Maybe there's an Ohio State fan in your league that preferred Fields to one of those guys or something like that, but they were always, the worst starter in your redraft league or a, streamable type guy, right? And it's crazy saying that about the MVP, but that's honestly where he was being drafted, right? So like I still have Rodgers in that quarterback 14-ish area. The wide receiving core looked horrendous. What I thought was interesting, Steve, I guess this is more of a dynasty conversation, is all the Romeo Dobbs talk over the summer. Christian
Yep.
Watson still played a lot despite not really practicing a lot. And he had that big drop. And
Yep.
it still seems like he wasn't completely in the doghouse after that either. So like the Packers they're just a mess at wide receiver. And, it seems like they love Watson a lot, right? For him not to practice as much as he did and to be out there. They clearly want him to be a thing, but, North Dakota State, he's fast, he's big, but, there's some concerns there. So that's why I love the Packers running backs as much as I do. That's why I think Tanyan is kind of right there with Gerald Everett, right? Like somebody's got to do it. But Aaron Rodgers is going to show up against the Bears. It's just what he does, right? So it's going to be a weird game, but like it's going to be reminiscent of when we've seen like Equinemius St. Brown catching touchdowns from him over the years. Like just we're going to see just so much randomness from the Packers. But I want to touch on the Bears, Steve. That Bears-Niners game, the weather was horrendous, right? And that was an ugly game. Tremendous win for the Bears, right? If you may not like Justin Fields as an Ohio State fan, Steve, but even you had to think that picture of him in the water celebrating the win was a pretty cool thing, right? He's
just
a guy
pure
that's gone
joy,
through some
joy, awesome,
pure joy, and he's gone through some criticism and some adversity. Terrible coaching staff there last year, brand new coaching staff this year. Underdogs against the Niners and coming away with a huge team win. And fantasy wise, like I'm willing to give everybody on the Bears and Niners a pass for their fantasy performances in week one. That was just horrendous weather conditions. That was just a gritting it to happen type game rather than truly seeing what these teams were made of fantasy wise. But I'm encouraged by Fields winning that game and getting this team to the win there. I hope the weather's okay. I'm ready to see the Bears actually be able to, run the offense without that handicap of the weather. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears kind of creep up on the lethargic Packers here and have a little surprising 2-0 start. But Aaron Rodgers is that good, Steve. He'll probably find a way.
Gotcha. No, I think that's very fair, and that actually was one of the questions that was tweeted at me by Andrew Hayslip at F_A Hayslip. He was just kind of expressing concern over Darnell Mooney only getting 3 targets. Now, this was only on 17 pass attempts in that bad weather game. I had similar concerns with Mooney as well as with Cole Kmet. Do we think that's just bad weather related? Is there a legitimate level of concern, or can we just chalk that up to the weather?
I don't think so on Mooney. Like I said, for me, it's mainly chalking it up to the weather, but Komet's a guy that saw a lot of target volume last year and largely is held back because of the touchdown total. I think he had 0 last year, right? No touchdowns for Komet last year. And I always look at him and Pat Freiermuth from last year. Like Freiermuth, I think had 8 touchdowns, right?
Yep.
If you were to like split those touchdowns up and give each of them 4, right? Like their ADPs would be a lot closer together. So Komet was a guy that I was in on going into this year because, there's just serious positive touchdown regression coming for him, right? If you're into stats whatsoever. But him, well, I think he put up pretty much a goose egg as well. Did he score any points this week?
0 catches, 1 target, no points.
Yeah,
which was
so he
devastating to me because I have Komet everywhere. It was a rough one.
So you probably agree with me then on that logic where I was kind of saying he's closer to Freiermuth than the ADP was suggesting because of the touchdown total differential,
for sure,
right?
Yeah.
But again, a 0 is concerning. Like Darnell Mooney saw stupid volume last year, right? And he's clearly the most talented pass catcher on that team. Like I'm not concerned that Darnell Mooney is going to have the highest target share on that team, but I'm a little discouraged by the 0 by Cole Kmet. He needs to come out and have a 2 touchdown game against the Packers for his fantasy manager's mental health.
For sure. For mine too. Yeah, no, I'm not particularly worried about it. I think a lot of the bizarreness of that game can be chalked up to the bad weather, which it really was just like a pool like with grass. It was insane. So yeah, I think I'll give them a pass on that. But of course we need to see it happen, but to your point about Justin Fields, he was my QB2 in the class, and again he was drafted as the 4th QB of that class. So I thought that was ridiculous. I still think he should be a New York Jet at this point, but it is what it is. I thought he should have gone at number 2 overall.
Oh yeah,
instead
I agree
of Zach
100%.
Wilson. So it's one of those things. It's like I have to put my biases to the side as well. Just because I saw Fields just destroy Penn State doesn't mean I don't think he can do it at the next level. Even though it was painful to see that. Very excited for Fields as a professional, and hopefully he can continue to put it together. But yeah, just a phenomenal picture of the guy sliding on the field, and then Fields just like drenched with the big smile. It was awesome. Gotcha. So the Bears, so we're still starting Mooney. We're still starting Komet. And then Fields, I think, is also an interesting streamer with that rushing upside. Looking at Monday night. David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert.
Mhm.
Weird game. Herbert played a little bit more than what I would have been anticipating, although there was chatter of it being more of a split. A lot of these teams now are becoming more of a split. And I think it's because of the longer season, trying to extend these guys' like professional careers and stuff. So I think it's a good thing for the players to kind of stay fresh and stuff. Big fan of Khalil Herbert, but I'm not sure if it's at a point where I'd trust him as a starter at this point, which kind of puts David Montgomery in a kind of a bizarre state of limbo. If you have him on a team, like if you drafted him as like your RB2, are you still rolling with him as your RB2, or are you thinking about benching him this week?
Yeah, I feel he's more in that flex category, like CEH. If you drafted him as the running back too, you were probably trying to ignore the drum beats of Khalil Herbert that we've been hearing all year so far. And honestly, Steve, Khalil Herbert looked awesome last year when Montgomery was injured.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
from people that follow the team closely, he seems to be the guy that fits what this coaching staff wants to do better. So as a guy that liked Khalil Herbert as a player, I was the beneficiary of picking him up before that month run he had last year and, reaped the good benefits of that. And Montgomery's a guy that where like he's been productive, but he kind of isn't that Chris Carson, James Robinson mold either, to where it's like nobody's ever wanted to like him, right? So I think people are thrilled that Khalil Herbert's here because it's like, oh man, now there's actually someone we can point to and be like, this is the guy that's gonna push David Montgomery out of here. So I think the David Montgomery haters are enjoying Herbert being around here, but Herbert's a good player, Steve. Like I said, he was productive last year when he got the opportunity, and he is going to get a larger split of Montgomery's workload than he got last year. So I do feel Montgomery is bumped down. If we're talking, starting RB2 to a flex, that type of bump down, I think that you got to move Montgomery downward just a little bit. Like you said, Khalil Herbert's not a guy I'm ready to roll out in the flex yet. But if I've stashed him on my bench, as a late round pick, or I've got him in a dynasty league, I'm pretty excited that his stock's going to continue to move forward.
Yeah, definitely. He to me like represented like the tier of like what I would consider like the like elite handcuffs, right? Like say Montgomery goes down, next man up, Herbert is an absolute smash. So he was someone who I was very aggressive with drafting in my redraft leagues this season, again, just based on what he was able to demonstrate as a rookie. So I'm with you. I'm very into Herbert myself, but not ready to throw him into a lineup at this point. We'll see if the usage remains. If it's around that like 40-50%, then that's another story. But I would rather have a couple of weeks worth of data before I make that jump. Now, Monday Night Football, there's a doubleheader. We got the Tennessee Titans at the Buffalo Bills, and then the Minnesota Vikings at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Titans had a very interesting week one. They had the loss to the New York Giants. Derrick Henry did not look quite as good as what he's shown in years past, and had a fumble. Passing game is a little bit of a mess. You had a very decent game from the rookie Kyle Phillips. So your taxi squads are very happy on Monday morning for sure. I would still feel pretty comfortable starting Derrick Henry just as a running back getting volume. Again, it's against the Bills. That showed to be a very poor matchup from the Thursday night game against the Rams last week. I would still be pretty bullish on Henry. Anyone else in that offense you'd be comfortable starting?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
No. And just so you know, Steve, I'm really enjoying this conversation because, as you know, I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is literally an hour and a half from Atlanta and an hour and a half from Nashville. And I grew up an Atlanta Falcons fan. It was the only local team here in the 90s, right? The Houston Oilers come to town. And then all of a sudden, everybody has left the Falcons and they're now Titans fans, except for me, right? So now I'm the only Falcons fan in the world, which is a pretty miserable existence. And there's all these Titans fans around now. So whenever the Titans struggle, I'm happy to see it because they took away my entire fan base as a Falcons fan. So when you said they lost to the New York Giants, a smile came across my face. I was just happy remembering
Music
that
to your ears. Yeah.
And then you asked, which fantasy players do you want to play from the Titans? And obviously we mentioned King Henry, and then the conversation stopped there, Steve. There's nobody else. There's nobody else. The team sucks, and I'm happy to see it.
There you go. I think that's settled. How about like Tannehill as like a super flex?
In Superflex, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Gotcha.
like
Okay.
we were talking about, Steve. I mean, it was the Cooper Rush fest today in Dynasty leagues and Superflex league. I mean, $100 to $300 fab on Cooper Rush because he's a warm breathing body that plays quarterback in the NFL. So in Superflex, absolutely, we're rolling out Tannehill. But that's it on the Titans, Steve. That is it. But the Bills, Steve, those guys looked ridiculous on opening day. Just walloped the Super Bowl champions by 3 touchdowns. Josh Allen is without question the best fantasy asset that exists in Superflex formats. And it's not very close right now. The Gabe Davis people are rejoicing, right? Gabe Davis is a guy I have very low exposure on. I'm not a Gabe Davis person,
Same.
right? But, I'm also, again, a very unemotional fantasy player, right? I'm not going to go get Gabe Davis now. I missed the acquisition price that I would want to be in at, but
That's right.
I'm not going to sit here and fight it. Gabe Davis has arrived. He's the Bills wide receiver 2. He looked good. And he's going to see some good volume this year. I mean, I don't see any path to other than injury of Gabe Davis not having 1,000 receiving yards plus this year. So you're rolling out Diggs, you're rolling out Davis, and I'm rolling out Singletary. I think Singletary has looked great. He's getting the volume there. I mean, he is the running back you want to start on that team. And this is a good team, Steve, even if Josh Allen cannibalizes some touchdowns. I mean, Devin Singletary has been productive. Again, he fits into that Chris Carson mold that I'm talking about. Nobody wants him, but hey, I'll take him. Right. If you're a 0 RB build anywhere, you're pumped to have Devin Singletary in there every week. So,
yeah, I also think it's worth noting that he looked great. He looked really good on Thursday night. Obviously, it was kind of a weird amount of work. I thought that Zach Moss got.
I thought he looked really good back into last year, too.
Exactly. I completely written off Zach Moss. I just was surprised that he played as much as he did. And obviously,
it's that James Cook fumble, man. That was
James Cook
first drive of the game. So
yeah, I think was that his first touch in the league?
It was his first touch in the NFL. Yeah, it reminded me of Kareem Hunt. Did Kareem Hunt
exactly
fumble
right.
his first touch in the NFL, and then he went on to win the rushing title? I don't see that for James Cook.
No,
it was so funny. Right. I was in one of my league threads. Somebody's like, "Oh, Cook's career's over now," and I'm like, "What about Kareem Hunt, man? The guy won the rushing title after doing that." But yeah, I don't think that was good for Cook. I mean, they got other bodies. They clearly like Moss better than we as a fantasy community do. But again, I like Singletary a lot more than the fantasy community does, and I happily roll him out in deep leagues all the time, and he rarely disappoints. He's good for like 12 points every week, and you'll take that at the bottom of your lineup,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm with you. The one questionable asset on this team is Dawson Knox, the tight end. Did not see a ton of targets in that Thursday night game. Was definitely it was one of these like tight ends that just didn't get it done. A lot of the guys in that territory did get it done, like Pat Fryermuth, right? That's a good one. Who's like being drafted in that range. Are we comfortable starting Knox if like you just got him as like your tight end to start, or would you defer to like a streaming option? Say like
I'd rather start Gerald Everett
or something. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like Dawson Knox is a guy where like we kind of like this talent coming out of Ole Miss a little bit, right? Like he's flashed at times. I feel like it's been these like little month-long touchdown streaks that have got us excited about him. He's been in a pretty productive offense now for a while and has not gotten out of that tight end dead zone, right? He's just he has permanent residence in the tight end dead zone there, Steve. Like he can't get enough of it. So I didn't draft any Dawson Knox. Like I said, that's not the tier of player I draft. If I'm going that low on tight end, I'm just streaming, right? I'll have Gerald Everett and Robert Tonyan and these guys and play matchups each week. I just don't really think there's a difference. Knox to me is one of those guys. He's lumped up there. I've seen him up there with Goddard at times, and that's just not the case, right? Like to me, he's closer to Gerald Everett than he is Pat Fryermuth.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. So moving on to the Vikings at Philadelphia Eagles, I think this one is a very clear case of not getting cute. If you have Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins, you're starting all those guys. On the Eagles side, Jalen Hurts, obvious. AJ Brown, obvious. Dallas Goedert, obvious. Would you still feel comfortable rolling out Devonta Smith with the 0 catch game in Detroit?
Yeah, I'm not benching him. I mean, he is clearly the number 2 wide receiver in Philly, right? I'm not going to panic over 1 week. It's not like this has been happening for a long period of time, right? There's another player we'll talk about, Allen Robinson, that kind of sucked all year last year and then sucked again week 1. So it's like, we don't have that whole year of sucking from Devonta Smith last year, right? AJ Brown's
right.
there now. Jalen Hurts clearly was like, oh my gosh, I've got this new toy. I can't stop playing with it, right? So maybe that calms down after week 1. I'm not panicking on Smith. I mean, the guy's just a technician at wide receiver.
Yeah.
He's going to be fine. Now, I'm not starting him over Dallas Goedert in like flex situations. He's the third guy I'm rolling out of those pass catchers. Like I would rather play Goddard.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather play Goddard over Smith almost every week. I honestly don't even care if it's tight end premium, even if it's just single PPR. Like I'm still going to play Goddard over Smith. I do think Brown's going to eat most of that wide receiver production there, but I think Smith is fine. Like he's definitely a flex worthy player, but if that shows you where I'm at, I would rather. I often make the decision between Goddard and him, and I always choose Goddard.
Gotcha. Okay. And another player to kind of touch on is Miles Sanders. My comment about me saying actually look good was more as far as like a fantasy output. He has looked good his whole career. So I just wanted to correct that a little bit there. But to me, going into week 1, he was a very borderline starting option. I think because of what we saw last week, I feel much better about having him in my lineups this week. So I would not hesitate to start Miles Sanders. Then a lot of those other running backs in that system, good to have on waivers, but we're talking like the deepest of leagues. Are you feeling comfortable starting someone like a Gainwell as far as I'm concerned?
No Gainwell for me. Now, Miles Sanders, Steve, I thought he was the most talented of that Jacobs Montgomery trio. So for me,
sure.
It's never been a talent thing for him, right? To me, it was a usage thing. If the usage is there, I have never questioned the talent of Miles Sanders. So if the usage is there, I'm in. Unfortunately, I didn't draft a lot of him because, the usage has just been so bad, right? Like, he screams RB dead zone, right? Like, historically, it's a bad bet to take backs in that area, right? But I love the talent, and if the volume is there now, I'm in.
Gotcha. Perfect. I love that.
But Great game. Thank God we got an awesome game there. Vikings and Eagles. I mean, I don't know if anyone's put this one out there, Steve, but I've been saying it for months, and I've drafted an excessive amount of them in redraft. Justin Jefferson's the first receiver going to hit 2,000 yards, and it's going to happen this season.
Well, if last week was any indication, I mean, holy mackerel. Like, I mean, we know the guy's a stud, but like how many times can he just keep doing it? It's just remarkable to see. Like it's just fantastic.
It's beautiful. Just watch him play wide receiver, Steve. It is gorgeous.
Yep. So I'm gonna be very excited for Monday night, but I'm also gonna be kind of watching like between my fingers, covering my face whenever.
Your quarterback's a stud, Steve. Your quarterback's a stud. Just embrace it and enjoy it. He's good. He's real good.
Oh no, I'm all about Hurts. He looked great against the Lions and the 14. I think it was only 14 attempts on the ground. Tremendously helps his floor as well as his ceiling for fantasy. So that covers the primetime games. We're going to roll through a couple listener start sit questions. So we just kind of touch on these quickly. First, we got a pair from at FF Bird Gang. He asks Christian Kirk or Juju.
Ooh, that's tough. Oh man, I'll go Kirk. Honestly, Kirk is a volume. He's a volume machine right now, right? And I could easily see the Chiefs having one of those weeks where it's like, oh, all of a sudden MVS had 8 grabs today, right? It seems like the Chiefs are going to be a little bit more sporadic. On Jacksonville, like I have a hard time seeing Kirk not leading that team in receiving volume each week. So let's go Kirk.
Yeah, the way I broke that down was like Kirk to me is more of like a ceiling play. Juju is more of a floor play. So it just depends on what your matchup is and what else you have as far as your starting options go. But if you're going for ceiling, which we typically are trying to go for points, I would be in agreement. Kirk is the way to go there. Second question from FF Bird Gang, Daryl Henderson or Chase Edmonds? I know what I would do here. Curious about your thoughts.
Henderson's playing against the Falcons, Steve. The man is going to eat, right? Like, it is what it is, right? We don't play defense in Atlanta, Steve. So maybe Cam Akers can rush for positive yardage this week against Atlanta. I'm rolling out Henderson. I want nothing to do with the Dolphins backfield, to be honest with you.
Gotcha. Perfect. All right. A question from at Lobo's FF Den, friend of the show, and so is FF Bird Gang, for what it's worth. He asks, Elijah Moore or Devonta Smith? So back to Devonta Smith, the disappointing week 1. Would you roll him out over Elijah Moore, who had 8 targets coming from Joe Flacco, of course, but where are you at with that?
I'm going Moore. I mean, we're coming off of a goose egg, Steve. And I mean, Elijah Moore, I think, had a 150-yard game with Joe Flacco last year. So, I mean, we've seen the two of them pair up very well. So I'm going to roll Moore. Garrett Wilson looked awesome this week, but I still feel that Moore is the wide receiver 1 there. There's a 0% chance that Devonta Smith is the one on his team. And again, I prefer his team's tight end. So I'm going to roll with Elijah Moore, who I do prefer as the top option on the Jets over my third option on Philly.
Gotcha. So far we are 3 for 3, so that's pretty impressive. Next question comes from at Buckeye Guy 0908. He asks, James Robinson or Adam Thielen?
I'm going Adam Thielen. I think that Vikings Eagles game can become a shootout. I'm still a little skeptical on Robinson, right? Like, again, I'm not all in. I'm encouraged, but I'm not about to start putting James Robinson in my starting lineup everywhere. Thielen's a guy that historically is just a touchdown machine. And that Vikings Eagles game really strikes me as a game that can end up being a game we're loving as fantasy players. And, you know, if it ends up like that, Adam Thielen's going to end up getting in the end zone unless Jefferson just scores all of them, which is possible. But
that's right. Yeah.
You know, I could see Thielen getting in the end zone before I can James Robinson replicating his week 1 performance.
No, for sure. All right. Let's go with a DST question. Did you play in any redraft leagues that still use DSTs?
Yes. Yeah. Luckily I don't have any. I've got like 2 with a kicker, and it's just such a pain. But the defense and special team I can get on board in like a Yahoo ESPN redraft league. It's kind of nostalgic. I don't mind the DST on
for
a
sure
redraft league. It's fine.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100% there. I think it's
not
okay.
in Dynasty though. If you got a you guys got to go IDP. Get with the IDP guys, baby, and play IDP if you want to do defense in Dynasty. If you're rolling out team defenses in Dynasty, like what are you doing here, right? Like team defenses are a redraft thing. I think they're cool for redraft, right? I'm not one of these guys get the defense out of the league. I was the get the kicker out of the league guy, but I'm cool with defenses in redraft. But in Dynasty, check out the IDP guys, baby.
I love that. Yeah. 100%. So this comes from at D_K dot. He's asking Colts DST. They are on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars or the New York Giants at home against the Carolina Panthers. So here's basically is what happened against the Jaguars last week and the Carolina Panthers last week. Carolina faced the Cleveland Browns. The Browns forced 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception. The Jaguars went up against the Commanders, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception. So do you like the Colts against them or the Giants against Carolina?
I like the Colts against the Jags. I actually think the Colts have a good defense, and I actually think the Jags have a bad offense. The Giants, like I'm excited about Brian Daboll and the fact that he's feeding Saquon Barkley, but I don't know that I'm sold on the Giants as being like a good football team or anything like that. And Carolina is kind of sneaky, right? Like they're a team that could score like 7 and you wouldn't be surprised, but you wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden Baker and DJ Moore are going nuts and Christian McCaffrey's got 30 fantasy points, right? I could see a scenario in which the Panthers lit it up against the Giants, much more so than I can see, Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk connect for 70 combined fantasy points and a win against the Colts. Like that's not going to happen, So I'm rolling the Colts, and that one's pretty easy for me.
I would agree. I think a good rule of thumb when it comes to DSTs is looking for, obviously you want to look at the sack potential, the turnover potential, but then just in general, just the talent on the defense. So even though, for example, like the Rams defense did not show up against the Bills, still a lot of great players on that team, a lot of players who can still wreak havoc. So in most matchups, I'm fine playing them. In this case, I'm rolling with the Colts. As far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, much better overall defensive talent in the secondary and on the offensive line, and phenomenal linebackers too when Leonard is healthy. So I'm going with the Colts on the road against Jacksonville. Last one for this section at nburko12 PPR. Pick 2 out of DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, or Travis Etienne.
Oh, give me the receivers. I'm
Yep.
okay benching ETN until I see him seize that job. Judy saw good volume, obviously had that big play, and I think DJ Moore is one of the best receivers in the league. I'm literally never benching him.
Yeah.
It's not happening, right? Like I understand he's not scored many touchdowns. Julio Jones didn't score that many touchdowns either. DJ Moore is a absolute stud.
I'm with you. No, for me that was a pretty easy decision. It's never. I mean, it's fine to ask, but to me, my brain instantly went to the wide receivers there. So that is a very interesting rundown where we were in agreement with every single one. So for the people who asked, thank you for asking. But I think we have a pretty clear
That's that same
consensus.
birthday Zen right there, Steve.
That's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, no, it could be that. It could just be the experience we have, perhaps too. But I like to think it's the
There we
May,
go.
the May birthday connection for sure. All right. So let's roll through the early slates on Sunday. We have the Jets at the Browns, the Commanders at the Lions. So let's start with these two matchups. The
Gross.
Browns, yeah, it's kind of gross, right? The Browns, I think you're happy to start Nick Chubb. I think you're happy to start Kareem Hunt. Um,
I'm not thrilled
any
to start Amari Cooper, though. I'm not.
I was just gonna say, like, is there anyone else on offense you would feel comfortable with? I would have, again, last week I would have been all about Amari Cooper. I'm a little freaked out. Like this is an example where I'm very into those running backs, but beyond that, it would be a pretty devastating injury or bye week situation for my team to have to rely on an Amari Cooper at this point, which really pains me to say. I'm a big fan of him, but looking like just the running backs at this
Wheels
point,
up when
correct?
Watson's back, but I mean,
Oh, for
right
sure, for
now, like
sure.
you rolling out Cooper over like Rex Burkhead, right? Like Cooper's down there right now. You know what I'm saying? Like when Watson's back, wheels up. But right now, I mean, maybe a couple flexes, but I'm not thrilled to play Amari Cooper at the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's like in these early weeks, we have all the options at our disposal. When we're getting like thick into the woods of the bye weeks and stuff,
Oh yeah.
we won't have as many options. So you're just gonna bet on talent or like the best opportunity, which I would say is Cooper in most cases. But yeah, so I'm with you there. Now the Jets, interesting split with Michael Carter and Brees Hall, Elijah Moore. We're definitely starting. Garrett
Mhm.
Wilson, good to have on the bench. We thinking about him as a flex play, or is
Just
that still a
more.
little deep?
Yeah,
Just more at this point.
more is the
Okay.
only one I'm playing now. Like in dynasty leagues, obviously you're thrilled to have Brees Hall right now, but I don't feel you're comfortable starting him unless you're in like a start like 11 or 12. You're rolling him out in a flex for sure there. But
Right.
like I'm not feeling good starting Carter or Hall right now in like a start 9 redraft league, right? Like
Right.
Carter
Right.
obviously had the strong week, led the backfield in targets, but whether it's here soon or whether it's like kind of Nick Chubb's rookie year where it's on the back end of the season, like that's Brees Hall's job eventually, right?
Oh, I
I,
like that. Yeah.
I'm not trying to play the game every week until that's settled, right? Like I'm going to roll with a wide receiver that I can pencil in some targets for before I'm trying to play that Jets running back guessing game, right? If I don't have any options, I'm hoping one of those guys, fall into the end zone, but I'm not thrilled to start either of them right now, but I would definitely rather roster Hall. That's, in my opinion, it's just inevitable that it's going to be his job. He's way more
Yeah.
talented of a player. They've got the investment in him. And like I said, even if it ends up being like Nick Chubb not getting the job till way later in the year, he's going to get the job. Garrett Wilson looked very promising, but again, this is not a high volume passing team. You can only start one of them. And to me right now, Elijah Moore is still without question, wide receiver 1 on that team. Wilson better not be on your waiver wire. Pick him up absolutely and stash him. But Moore is the only guy that I'm starting on the Jets right now.
I like it. I was trying to think back to Nick Chubb's rookie season. Was that Isaiah Crowell who
Yep.
was the starter?
Who was pretty productive for a couple years there for the Browns, honestly.
Or was it
Yeah.
Carlos Hyde? I think it was
Oh yeah,
Carlos
yeah.
Hyde who
It
was
was
there as
Carlos
well.
Hyde, the Nick Chubb year. Yeah, Crowell actually had a couple productive years there before that crew got there. But yeah, it was Carlos Hyde
Because he
that
got
he was
traded to
behind
the
for a little while.
Jags in the middle of the season, right?
Yep, I believe
Oh,
so.
that's
We're
crazy.
going like 5 years back now, Steve. But I
Right.
specifically remember, like, man, I've been sitting on Chubb for quite a few weeks
Mm-hmm.
in this redraft league. But I was like, I can't drop him, and he was a league
That's right.
winner that year. He was tremendous in the
100%.
back end of that season. So Brees Hall's
That's right.
talent is just too immense to not hold on to. Right? He's going to take the job. So
For sure, for sure. Then we have the Commanders at the Lions. A lot to like with what the Lions showed last week.
Commanders too were pretty good, for
Absolutely.
them. I'm optimistic from what I saw from them, from what I expected.
For sure. Yeah, I think Wentz is a super flex caliber starter. Antonio Gibson, I say is full go. Um, Terry
The passing
McLaurin.
usage for Gibson was very encouraging. They used him in the passing game quite a bit. He looked good. He's obviously getting the carries with Robinson out. Gibson went from a guy that we were hating. I think I got him in the 10th round in a redraft a couple weeks ago, right? It was crazy how far the hate got on Gibson.
Oh yeah.
And now, he's a no-brainer start, right? Like, you're putting him in every single time until Robinson's back and we see the carries come down a little bit. But he scored, 20 fantasy points in week 1? Like, Gibson's a no-brainer right now.
Yeah, I think he had like 6 catches and,
Yeah.
a very phenomenal game. Yeah, you love to see that. I mean, you hate to see what happened to Brian Robinson, but just a
Oh,
guy
yeah.
who was getting written off all. He was like being like he's just going to return punts and all this stuff. Like it
Yeah,
was just good
this
to
is a
see
guy that
him.
scored over 200 points last year, right? Like, he's not
Yeah,
dead.
right, exactly. So no, absolutely. So Gibson and Terry McLaurin. We're not benching Curtis Samuel. We're happy to have him on the bench. How about like a Johann Dodson? He was someone who I thought was a borderline start last week. Perhaps my Penn State bias just getting a little overexcited there, but I
Now,
mean,
I know people higher than you, man. I don't know if you know Robbie Jeffries, a TFA brethren with me
oh
at the
sure,
Fantasy
yeah.
Authority. He thinks Dotson's outproducing McLaurin this year. He
Whoa,
is standing on the hill like, look, he's got a better prospect profile. He's already starting, and he outperformed him week 1 as well, right? Like, he's on the Dotson over McLaurin now train. So, like, there are people
wow,
out there higher than you. I've rostered him a ton. Like, he's my last player on the bench in a lot of redraft even. But he's a guy if you play in like a sleeper league with me, you saw the chat feed, he's on the block right now, so he's a guy I'm trying to capitalize on the 2 touchdowns. Cause I feel it's always fool's gold. If you're getting excited on a game that's largely propped up by touchdown performance, that's always going to come back to earth. So I'm not ready for him in redraft yet, but he was getting underdrafted in dynasty rookie draft, Steve. There's people that drafted him mid-second that are thrilled
oh
right
yeah,
now that he should have been going in the first. I mean, if you drafted James Cook over Jahan Dodson right now, you feeling good about that one? Probably not. Those
right.
guys have gone different directions since rookie draft. So I think you're thrilled
Oh
to
yeah,
have Dodson if you've got him, but I'm not starting him just yet unless I have to.
gotcha. Yeah, and then on the other side of the ball, yeah, I mean, we'll stick with the Commanders for a second. I think Logan Thomas being able to play as much as he did, very encouraged by that. He was kind of someone who I was kind of questionable on, like if he would even be active or not. But he played. It was great. I only bring him up because like in that lower end of like tight ends, just it gets ugly fast. And again, he has shown to be a tight end one in that offense, but without Carson Wentz, obviously. So I'm low key kind of excited for him as long as he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
In like these deeper like multiple tight end leagues or like tight end premium leagues, I think he's definitely a guy to have on your radar for sure. I just wanted to throw that out there. Then in Detroit, they obviously put up a ton of points against Philadelphia. It was a real shootout. It was a very exciting game, and thank goodness
Mm-hmm.
the Eagles ended up winning there. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think you're very, very comfortable starting him.
Mm-hmm.
The DeAndre Swift, like what an absolute stud. Jamal Williams is kind of an interesting one too, who had a lot of work, especially like at the goal line and the red zone and stuff. Not sure if I'm ready to throw him as a flex play yet, but if he's on your roster, I think in the weeds of the bye weeks and weeds of like injury situations popping up, I think you could feel comfortable with him in a starting lineup. I'm not so sure about this week though. Jared Goff, he's barely a super flex starter as far as I'm concerned. So right on the cusp. Any differing thoughts on the Lions?
I think Jared Goff is a comfortable super flex starter, right? Like,
Okay,
if you're in,
gotcha.
I like him as I don't like him as my QB2, but I think he has a higher ceiling, I feel like, than a lot of those back end guys. Like Carson Wentz obviously looked better week 1, but I could see the Lions getting to 40 points in a shootout with somebody a lot faster than I could the Commanders, right? I could see a
Mm,
scenario where Jared
hmm.
Goff has a big game. So I feel he's more of a ceiling play than like your Carson Wentz's of the world, who are more of a floor play.
Yeah.
Goff having a 35-point game is not out of the realm. I'm not saying that's going to happen on a regular basis, but I think I can get that from him before I could get it from a lot of those guys in his tier.
Sure.
But
like Davis Mills.
Yeah,
for
like Davis
example.
Mills is more of a floor play. Like I don't see the Texans breaking 30 points. I think the Lions are a well-coached team with a lot of skilled players there, right? Especially when they get Jamison Williams back. Like there's DJ Chark is a pretty talented guy that's like doesn't get talked about, right? They got a lot of talented football players on that team. And I think almost everybody likes their coach, right? He's like, if you like football, you have a hard time not liking that guy.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So to me, the Lions are more of a sneaky team than people realize to be like a decent NFL team. So I'm okay with Goff and Superflex, but yeah, Swift is a no-brainer. St. Brown is just a target hog. He's a no-brainer. But I think that's it that I want on the Lions right now.
Yeah, I think
TJ
Hawkinson.
Yeah.
I think he's still like a set it and forget it type of tight end at this point.
I prefer Goddard, but he's right there in that tier, after Goddard.
For sure.
I prefer Goddard though, but he's probably the next man up after that.
I like it. All right, next group here, we got the Buccaneers at the Saints, as well as the Panthers at the Giants. I think the Buccaneers, obviously, are starting Brady, Mike Evans, and Fournette. We don't want to overthink these things. Kind of interesting wide receiver talent below Evans, though. Godwin probably not going to play this week. Or maybe the next couple weeks, not sure just yet. Just keep your eye on that. Julio Jones and Russell Gage. I'm more likely to play Julio Jones based on what I saw last week. Would you feel comfortable throwing Julio into a flex?
I'll flex Julio. Yeah, I'll flex Julio. I liked what I saw week one. Again, Falcons fan here. I was shocked at the deal Russell Gage got. Like it was news to me that Russell Gage was apparently really good. I had just found that out when the Bucs paid him, and everybody's like, "Oh, Russell Gage is going to be the man. Tom Brady wanted him." Like, I'm just like, "Oh, Russell Gage is." People are excited about Russell Gage. Like, okay, all right. So Julio Jones, on the other hand, Steve, I've actually known that he's been pretty good. I think at his stage of his career, I don't think he was overly motivated in Tennessee last year. The Tom Brady factor for him, I think he's pretty fired up this year, and with Godwin out, like he's not the wide receiver 3 there anymore, Steve. With Mike Evans banged up, like I wouldn't be surprised if Julio went gangbusters this week, put up 7 for 80 and a touchdown. Like I could see that type of performance for Julio. I think he's motivated. He's 32, 33 years old, but we're talking a Hall of Fame type talent here, right? He's got a little more athleticism left in the tank than a lot of people do at that point. And for me, it's is he fired up thing. And I think he's fired up right now. And I've been encouraged by what we saw in week 1. So I'm okay rolling out Julio in the flex.
Perfect. Okay. Saints. Kamara had a down week. You're not benching Kamara. You're playing Kamara. As far as I'm concerned, you're playing Michael Thomas. I really like Jameis Winston as a redraft starting, or as a single QB starting QB. So super flex smash, obviously. Where are we at with like Jarvis Landry, who had a great week 1, was kind of a borderline flex option going into week 1, and Chris Olave. You have any thoughts on that trio of wide receivers there?
Yeah, there's definitely passing volume there for one or the other of Landry and Olave to have a good week. I just don't want to play the guessing game until I see it sort out a little bit more there. So I'm probably going a different option than those two guys at this point.
Gotcha.
Michael Thomas, I mean, we're not going to see the 150 catch Michael Thomas again. But this version of Michael Thomas is using that big body to get open, be a red zone presence. I think we're going to see a really strong bounce back year for Michael Thomas. Like I said, it's going to look a little different statistically than it previously did. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a double-digit touchdown season out of Michael Thomas, him using that big body and being a red zone target for a gunslinger and Winston. I'm not as high as Winston on you to where I'd roll him out in single QB. Like I said, in one QB leagues, I mean, we're talking like Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins are barely starting. And I mean, Kirk Cousins, in my opinion, is an absolute stud that gets to throw to Justin Jefferson. So, if I'm working in that back end of QB1s, like I'm absolutely going with Cousins or Carr or even Rodgers over Jameis Winston. So I'm not quite there yet on him being a starter in a single QB league. But yeah, I'm thrilled to start him in Superflex. Yep. I hate the Saints more than I hate any team in the NFL. But again, they won me some money because I'm smart enough to bet against the Falcons in the fourth quarter every week. So
I mean, I'm not laughing at your pain, but it is just remarkable how many times it has happened. But oh man, but at least good for you. You can leverage your sad experience to benefit.
If
So
I'm going to
good.
be miserable as a fan, I'm going to have it be a profitable endeavor. Does that make sense?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's right. All right. So now the Carolina Panthers at the New York Giants. The RB1 at this point, Saquon Barkley, fire him up, and Christian McCaffrey. We're not hesitant on him at this point. DJ Moore, we're still rolling with. Um, the Giants wide receiver core is kind of an interesting one. Sterling Shepard had a decent game. I was kind of questionable on how he was even if he was even going to be able to play. Uh, and then Tony plays a very small amount of snaps, 2 rushing attempts. I don't know if he had a single target. Like it's just how bizarre. And Kenny
And again,
Galladay,
he looked
go figure that
awesome
one out.
every time he touched the ball. He looked incredible every time
That's
he
right.
touched the ball. He juked like 6 guys, right? I just don't
Right.
understand. It's a Miles Sanders thing, right? Like I'm seeing a very good football player on the field here. Why is he not playing? So obviously,
Right.
Kadarius Toney's kind of a big personality. I don't know if he's rubbed Daboll the wrong way or what, but it seemed like he rubbed the old staff the wrong way too. I don't know if he's just a toxic personality or what, but I mean, the guy is insane with the ball in his hand, Steve.
I know. I
Like
know.
it's crazy.
So I think a lot of these guys are like holds like for your bench. You just cannot start. I don't think any of these pass catchers in that
This is the Barkley
Giants
McCaffrey
offense.
fest, and this is crazy
Yeah.
because, like, I
Yep.
vividly remember a conversation I was having in one of my home leagues here. McCaffrey went second overall, and Barkley goes like 17th. And when the guy that drafts Barkley, I'm like, dude, you got an insane value here. There's literally no difference in the player you just drafted and the player that went at 2 overall. And everybody in the room is like, oh, Christian McCaffrey is so much better than Saquon Barkley and all this. I'm like, what's the difference in the two players, right? Like literally, what's the difference here, right? Like Christian McCaffrey
Right.
ain't played in 2 years. Barkley, came off an injury himself, right? We like Christian McCaffrey because he can catch 100 balls. Guess what? Didn't Saquon catch like 94 balls in his rookie year, right? Like I just don't
Mm,
understand the gap in between those two, right? If you prefer McCaffrey, cool. I think most people did at draft time, right? Now, there may be people week 1 reacting like, oh, I've got Barkley ahead of McCaffrey now. But to me, the almost 2-round gap that existed between them was not
insane.
justified, right? They're
Yeah.
almost the same player, right? Like it was crazy that you could get Barkley almost at the 2-3 turn in a super flex league when
Yeah.
McCaffrey's going in the first round, so it's crazy to me. So
Yeah. No. And people who were able to see that as a tremendous buying opportunity. Awesome job. I got a couple shares of Barkley. It's just you can recognize a talent and like why is he a full round? It makes no sense to me, but
yeah, pretty much the
so
same
I'm
guy
with
on
you
paper, but the
100%.
ADP was just extreme.
Absolutely. Um, yeah. So I think we had that pretty well figured out. Along with DJ Moore, we're obviously starting him. I think Baker Mayfield is like a super flex option, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah,
And
I
Daniel
prefer him to Daniel
Jones.
Jones.
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I think Daniel Jones is like an interesting like bye week fill in like
I'd
QB
rather play
two.
him than Cooper Rush.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Because he does have that. He does have. He's had moments of having his rushing be, on
Hey, he
display.
ran like 22 miles an hour, Steve, and then fell down.
Oh, I remember that
he
very
was he
clearly.
was moving though. He was moving.
That's right. Oh man. Okay, yeah, so that's I think that game's pretty straightforward. Last little group here of this early slate. We got the New England Patriots at the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Colts at the Jaguars, and the Dolphins at the Ravens. Let's start with the Steelers. If Najee Harris is active, we're starting Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson. Kind of a disappointing debut from George Pickens and Chase Claypool. Again, these are guys that you aren't planning on starting. I certainly hope not, but definitely good to have on your rosters, right?
Oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I mean, Harris and Deontay Johnson are absolute no-brainers, right? Like that
yeah.
catch Deontay made. Like Deontay's kind of been like better Juju the past couple years, and he's like, "Hold on a
Mm.
second, you guys are pinning me as like a low A dot guy. Get out of here! Look at this crap," you know. So like
Oh, he
Deontay's,
literally looked like Michael Jordan. Like it was
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
And
he's
then you got yeah.
but the Claypool Pickens thing, right? Like everyone had crowned Pickens as, oh, this guy's already taken Claypool's job, and honestly, it looked that way in the
Oh
in the
yeah.
preseason. It really did, you know. But Claypool was involved a lot more, you know. So if you're gonna start one of those guys, it's still Claypool right now. I mean, Pickens is obviously the guy you'd rather hold in Dynasty, but you know, you're gonna start Freiermuth at tight end. You're rolling out Harris and Deontay Johnson.
Yep.
You know, Mitch Trubisky, maybe he's kind of in that Daniel Jones conversation, you know, like if you got a really bad super flex roster, he might be your QB2. But
Yeah, at this point, he is my QB2 in Scott Fishbowl because Zach Wilson was my QB2, which still isn't great. But you were thinking like, oh well, maybe there's a little bit of a breakout happening here. But yeah, so I'm gonna be rolling with husband material Mitch as my QB2. So see how it goes. See how it goes. You like the talent around Mitch, but we just got to put it all together, right?
yeah, he's got the weapons and he's sneaky good on the ground too. He could get in the end
That's right.
zone for a rushing touchdown, sling a couple TDs to Deontay, and have a good day for you. You know, so we'll see.
Absolutely. Now the New England Patriots is kind of a funky situation. Mac
Always
Jones
is.
had it always is, right? I mean, Mac Jones is like just like a fairly safe flourish like QB2 option. Um a lot of decent pass catchers there, but none that you are rushing to get into your starting lineup, right? I mean, I think Jacoby Myers is probably the closest option that you'd get into your starting lineup as a flex.
Maybe
If
Hunter Henry. Maybe
a
Hunter
Hunter
Henry.
Henry, sure, right,
Yeah, like I'm starting none of these guys, Steve. None of them.
right,
I'm starting none of them. If I had
perfect,
to, it
okay,
would be Hunter Henry in like a streamable tight end situation. Hunter Henry's there with like Gerald. Like we'll keep bringing up Gerald Everett. Hunter Henry's there in the Gerald Everett bucket, right? So
yeah,
he's got a better chance to sneak into my lineup on a streaming tight end roster than me flexing Jacoby Myers or Devontae Parker. Like that's just not happening. I'd rather
right.
flex Robbie Anderson than guess which Patriots receiver it's going to be.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that's
Yeah. So
interesting.
back to
Okay,
the Robbie Anderson, you know, like I would rather roll with him than the Patriots wide receivers, if that shows you where I'm
gotcha.
at on the Patriots wide receivers.
Yeah. Then there was obviously a split in the backfield. You had a little Damian Harris, you had a little Ramondre Stevenson, you had Ty Montgomery, who's now on IR, so that kind of boosts up Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, who are pretty typical like zero RB targets. How are we feeling about them? Are we rolling them out in the flex at all, or are you kind of holding your nose
No.
and no, just it's
Yeah,
avoiding at this
no,
point?
like
Okay,
I like having those guys and I on a dynasty roster for when buys start. You know, I guess
yeah,
Stevenson's got some upside we're excited about, but like
yeah.
in a week to week redraft type setting, like I don't feel good about starting those guys. Period. I'd rather start Rex Burkhead than either of them.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
So again, there's a name that's unsexy that I would rather put in my lineup, right? I would rather start Sexy Rexy over those guys. 19
What
touches last week for Burkhead. So again, I know we're not on the Texans, but there's a very unsexy waiver wire name that I would roll out over both the Patriots guys.
I mean, we can just touch on him for a second.
Mhm.
71% of the snaps, because like the big hot name in preseason was Damian Harris, or
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh yeah.
Damian
Pierce.
the
Pierce.
Damian
Yeah.
Pierce. I apologize, but Burkhead got all the passing work, and that's what you want out of those running backs in that range. So it's just very interesting. But we will touch on the rest of the Texans in just a moment here. Yeah, so we got that pretty well pat for the Patriots and the Steelers. Colts at Jags. We're starting Jonathan Taylor. We're starting Michael Pittman. Phenomenal start to the season for both of them. Matt Ryan to me is a QB2. He's a super flex option.
Mhm.
Um, anyone outside of the big three there?
No, I don't like any of their Naheem Hines. I'm cool flexing Naheem Hines. The guy is
Okay.
heavily
Yep.
involved. If you're in a PPR league, I mean, he could rack up 7, 8 catches any given week.
Oh yeah.
You know, in PPR, he is a weekly start, Naheem Hines in PPR. So I
Yep.
was going to say this earlier when I forgot which backup running back you were talking about. I was going to say it takes a very special backup running back to start without injury, and Kareem Hunt's the one that
Mm-hmm.
is obviously the premier backup running back in the league. We roll out Kareem Hunt in the flex as if
Mm-hmm.
he's a stud, right? Nyheim Hines is the next best one. What other backup running back in the league outside of Kareem Hunt are you starting week to week over Nyheim Hines? Nyheim Hines is one of those very undervalued guys where in a PPR setting, you can just bank on the fact that he is involved. And again, Matt Ryan's 38 years old now. He's going to use that shorter part of the field a little more at this stage in his career. So I'm rolling out Hines in the flex comfortably.
I love that. Okay. And I would agree with you. Certainly. Now the Jaguars, we mentioned about Christian Kirk, but we do like his target upside and his potential. James Robinson, Travis Etienne, we probably still lean Etn. I think Robinson, a case could be made to flex him for sure. Do we like anyone outside of Kirk, Robinson, and Etn?
Lawrence and Superflex, you'll still roll out.
Okay.
But I'm not excited to. But, the talent's there in that QB2 tier. Again, I mean, we're talking Carson Wentz, Daniel. It's a very unsexy tier. With Lawrence, you can at least tell yourself a story where there's untapped potential and you're going to see a come up here soon. So, I mean, in Superflex, you're still going to play.
And there can be pass volume as well.
But again, it's been go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say a lot of the games that they're not exactly going to be in, positive game scripts a lot of the time. So you just expect a lot of passing volume from Lawrence, but then with that may come a couple of turnovers as well.
Oh, yeah. And it's been a kind of a theme for me on this episode to bring up like an unsexy name I'd rather start when we're talking about a guy. I'd rather start Marcus Mariota than Trevor Lawrence. Yeah,
I love it. I'm open to all perspectives, but that's a lot of decisions that people are gonna have to make. You know what I mean? So I'm all about it. So I love that. So the Jaguars are pretty straightforward. Dolphins and Ravens. The Ravens wide receiver core just continues to drive you nuts. Although we do like the Rashad Bateman 55-yard touchdown reception. Only 2 catches, though. It's like, come on. Like, we just want a little bit more volume.
Devin Duvernay was eating, Steve.
This is true. Yeah. But unless you're playing like a GPP, I don't think anyone was starting Duvernay there, or even if he's like rosterable outside of the deepest of dynasty leagues. I'm not sure. But obviously Lamar Jackson, we're still rolling with a lot of question marks still around J.K. Dobbins. If he's active this week, would you feel comfortable starting him?
No, but I'm thrilled he's coming back. Like I said, he's a guy I do have a lot of exposure to in Dynasty. I've been patient with, right? I just feel he's just so talented and he's on a team that loves to run the ball. I feel like once he's healthy and he's back, and again, I mean, their receiving core is thinner than it's ever been. Marquise Brown's gone, right? So you would think when he's back, he's getting some workload, and that could be as early as this week. But I feel like we're not at the bye weeks yet, right? There's only like 2 guys injured right now. We have options right now, Steve.
That's right.
4 weeks from now, we may be worrying about that stuff. But right now, we've got other options. We have the luxury of allowing him to show it to us first. So
absolutely. I love the way you mentioned that, because it is a luxury at this point, that there's no need to take the chance on it until you see it happen, right? Kind of like, again, like I don't want to keep bringing up James Robinson, but I'm still in shock over what he did last week. So I just was not throwing him out in any lineups until I could actually see what that even remotely looks like. So
I actually started George Pickens over James Robinson in a guillotine league because I was like, I refuse to start a guy first game off Achilles, right? Like I'm literally just taking an upside shot on the guy that looked awesome in spring because like I'm not starting Robinson, right? I just can't do it. And, clearly that was the wrong decision, but, I feel you have to be comfortable. And I think this is important too, Steve, because we get a lot of start-sit questions, right? That's everybody's favorite thing. Start-sit. I need somebody else to validate my opinion and feel good about it, right? A lot of start-sit questions are, Steve, like we're not going to influence who they're starting or sitting. People just want to feel good. Okay, somebody else agrees with me, right, that I should start this player, right? If you're comfortable with the decision you made and why you make it, you're okay taking the L, right? Like I'm not pissed that James Robinson outscored George Pickens. I know why I made that choice. I felt comfortable with it. And I'm good. If J.K. Dobbins blows up this week, I'm not going to be upset about it. I'll be thrilled because of my 30% exposure to him in Dynasty, right? I'm not going to be like, oh, man, I left points on the table this week. No. Like I said, I had the luxury of letting him show me. First, I'm now thrilled I get to start him the rest of the year, right? So be comfortable in your decision-making process, right? Just don't throw darts. Know why you made the choice and feel good about it. And no matter what happens, you'll be like, my process was sound, right? And I guess that's easier for me to say. playing the way that I play, right, on a large scale, it's all about process, do the correct process over and over and over again. If your process is sound, you're not going to beat yourself up over this stuff, you know?
Oh no, but that is exactly how you get the emotions out of it. We all get attached to our guys. We're really rooting for them or whatever. Then when they don't play so well, we just want to figure it out. Well, how come this happened? So when you get down to the bottom of it, rather than just having just like hard eyes, just like not everything is just like rose-colored glasses with these guys. You just got to see it for what it is. But you're exactly right. You want to be able to justify the process, and then if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But just leave the emotions out of it, which again can be very challenging to do. But a seasoned player, this should not be something that you have to struggle with. You know what I mean? So I'm with
Mhm.
you. And obviously, in the Ravens offense, Mark Andrews, you're firing him up, of course. Now the Dolphins are an interesting one. Uh, Jalen Waddle, obviously, you're starting. Tyreek Hill, you're starting. I was very encouraged, actually, by how Tyreek Hill played. Not that I was like shocked, like, oh my goodness, like
Oh,
he's
yeah.
just
Waddle
going
had
to
that big
forget how to
touchdown too.
play.
It
Oh,
looks like
yeah.
they can coexist pretty well, you know?
Well, that was more
Mm.
of the question, like, because you obviously saw Tua have the rapport with Waddle last year. Like, how is Tyreek Hill going to fit in, even though he's an absolute superstar? Like, how is that going to work? It's going to work out fine, just based on what we saw. You mentioned about not loving the backfield. So
Mhm.
Chase Edmonds was someone who I was pretty excited about, just with the opportunity and just the overall, trending up offense in Miami. Left a little bit of meat on the bone, if you will, on Sunday. Had about like 10
Mhm.
points or so. And then Raheem Mostert had, I believe, 6 touches. So definitely Edmonds is definitely the clear starter there.
Mhm.
And Mike Gesicki, I mean, my goodness, like all the
I'd
talent
rather
in the
start
world.
Gerald Everett.
No, that this again, if you drafted Gesicki as just like your back end tight end one, Everett is a phenomenal example of how you can shift. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Um, I think even this week and potentially even the rest of the season, I think you could feel more comfortable with Everett again, just because of the offense that he's attached to, and just how they played. It's just ridiculous. It's so sad about Mike Gesicki. I hope he can have some kind of stats, but oh, it's
Oh, yeah, I
horrible.
forgot he's a Penn State guy too. Yeah, athletic freak too,
That's
man.
right.
Like, we
Yeah.
love these athletic, guys at tight end, and I mean, he's as athletic as any of them, except for Kyle Pitts, obviously.
Oh,
Um,
obviously, right.
you
Yeah,
know,
the
but yeah, you're
unicorn.
you're 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 still flexing Chase Edmonds, if you
Yep.
drafted him to be your flex running back, you know. But again, I'm just not excited. That's a Niners. The Niners coaching staff is there now, and we know those guys can't get enough of Raheem Mostert, man. They just love that
Oh
guy.
yeah.
It's kind of like a Taysom Hill, Sean Payton thing. Like, he's got like naked pictures of the coaching staff or something, right? Like,
Yeah, he's got some kind of blackmail for sure. Yeah,
yeah,
and all the other players like, how come he keeps getting like opportunities? Like,
yeah.
but it's so funny. All right, yeah. So I think we nailed the Ravens and the Dolphins. What we're gonna do now is just wrap up some of the listener questions, some more start sits here for you. All right, we got one from, and if I am saying your handle wrong, I do apologize, but Apollyon LC, he's asking uh, Daryl Henderson, Ezekiel Elliott, or Rashad Penny. Now the setup is it's PPR, but with a half point per carry. So half point per carry, PPR, Daryl Henderson, Ezekiel Elliott, or Rashad Penny.
That's tough. I could see the Cowboys offense struggling, but you got to think Zeke's going to get the. I don't play in any point per carry. That's uncharted territory for me. So
Right.
I I would. What were the carry totals on those guys? Do you have those on hand, Steve?
I don't,
Because even though Penny
unfortunately.
didn't score and have like a big fantasy day, I thought Penny looked really good in that Monday Night Football game. That one's going to
I
hedge a lot as if Kenneth Walker's back or not.
I think Penny, I think he looked phenomenal, but he only had 10 carries, I believe. 12 carries and 2 catches on 3 targets. Henderson, basically, my answer to this would be Daryl Henderson, just based on
Mhm.
how Cam Akers looked.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Well, they're going to be
um,
destroying the Falcons as well, and they need to, run out the clock and stuff like that. So,
for sure.
um, I was just curious if you had you had a lot of like the percentage backfield split numbers. I wasn't sure if you had the actual carry numbers for each of those guys. I don't play in any point per carry, so I'm enjoying this question to kind of get educated on it. But
So
I'm honestly comfortable with any of those guys. I don't really feel you can go wrong there. I think they're all kind of in the same tier. I was real encouraged with how Penny looked. Henderson obviously looked great and probably has the best game script of these guys. The Cowboys could be losing badly to the Bengals, I believe, is who they get this week. So that one could get out of hand for them to have a real negative game script for Zeke.
definitely. So Zeke last week had 10 carries. And if we think it's going to be the same kind of a game flow or worse in this case, if it's
Worse.
super
Yeah.
rush, yeah.
Yeah. I'd
Um,
go Henderson.
Henderson did have 13 carries and 5 catches. So just an overall touches standpoint, Henderson
Mm-hmm.
led the way and I believe was the most productive overall between the three. It was pretty close there between him and Penny. But yeah, so I would go Henderson just based on the potential workload, just with what we saw out of Cam Akers on a Thursday night. So
Yeah, he had the highest volume and has the best game script, so he's the safe bet there. But I thought Rashad Penny looked awesome. If Kenneth Walker's out, I could see you going Penny as well, just because he looked great.
yeah, and it's so odd, right? Like if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Zeke, like no doubt. But it
Oh
all
yeah,
changes that fast, you know.
Dak to Cooper
Uh,
Rush is that's a totally different football team.
Right. And Pollard is going to be in there for the majority of the time in those passing situations and in those negative game scripts. At least that's what I would figure would be the wise way to go. So that does limit Ezekiel Elliott's upside in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, so that sounds good. And then at just in time for USA, he asks Miles Sanders or CEH.
Sanders for me.
Oh, interesting. I went CEH on this
Yeah,
one.
I'll go Sanders.
All
I'm not
right.
a big
So
CEH guy. I love Sanders, right? So I'm a Sanders guy, like from the film, from college coming in. If he's
right.
going to get the volume, he's a player I believe in. CEH isn't a player I like, and you probably have the volume numbers. Pacheco got a lot of work, didn't he? Didn't
He
Pacheco
actually
get some work?
he had a very good amount of work, especially
He
getting
had
the
more
goal
work
line
than
rush.
Gainwell did, right?
I believe so, but also like Boston Scott is in the mix too. So like Sanders only had 13 attempts, but he did phenomenally with those attempts. Um, Pacheco had 12 attempts and no targets. So
Pacheco outcarried both Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell combined, did he not?
that's possible. Let's see here. Scott had 4 attempts. I mean, he just made his day with that touchdown, and then Gainwell likely
5,
the
I think, for
same kind of
Gainwell. Yeah, so
usage.
Pacheco
Five
outcarried those
touches. Yep.
guys by 3.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
it seems like they want to involve Pacheco. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, if you told me Pacheco had more carries than CEH this week randomly, I wouldn't be overly shocked by it. If you told me that Miles Sanders lost, carries to Boston Scott, I'd be more surprised. So,
Sure. Not for sure. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. I'll have to make a little note of that. That's finally our first like disagreement.
yeah,
So
there
we
we
will see.
go.
And maybe that's just me being like a jaded like Eagles fan. So I don't know, but I'll just kind of go with CEH playing on short week in the Thursday night game where not always, but sometimes like running backs can be featured just a bit more just because of the
Oh yeah,
short
and
week and
Jalen
all
Hurts
that
is
fun
much more
stuff.
likely to cannibalize a touchdown attempt at the goal line. So I mean, there's that too. You
For
know,
sure.
just pick your poison there. Either way, like I said, I'm a process guy. Either way, whichever one of them I'm starting, they're close in the rankings. So I'm not going to beat myself up about it either way with those two.
Perfect. And then the last one is from at the progressive PPR Travis Etienne or Daryl Henderson. So just a lot of
Henderson.
questions around Daryl Henderson. For me, it's Henderson as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're back on track there.
And that's one thing I want to say here, Steve, because especially if you play Dynasty like we do and you're playing redraft, a lot of times it's hard to leave that Dynasty mindset behind and play redraft,
Yep.
right? Like, again, like take a guy like Travis Etienne and a guy like Rex Burkhead, right? Rex Burkhead's a little more productive right this second, right? But
Right.
we're used to Travis Etienne having this type of value and Rex Burkhead being a borderline waiver guy in Dynasty leagues, right? But Rex Burkhead over 70% market share. You're not playing that,
Absolutely.
So.
Yep. And then just one last question, which was already addressed extensively, and you'll understand why in a second here from @DadBod Brett. he's basically a streaming tight end. So he just was looking for a tight end
Gerald
to
Everett's
roll
his
with.
guy, baby.
He has Gerald Everett. He said roll with Everett or go with another sleeper tight end. And if I had one, who would it be? Mine for this week would be Hayden Hurst in the case that T. Higgins does not suit up. So I could just see a scenario where the Cowboys really hone in on Jamar Chase, try to double him up. And if they get a lot of pressure on Burrow, like Pittsburgh was able to, a lot of short passes could be going Hurst's way, who doubled the amount of targets that Everett got last week. But that was also in a deep overtime game. So that's not always going to happen. But
The Bengals
Everett
are going to get ahead of this game quick.
Well, this is what I was thinking. It could be they could get ahead and it could just be an absolute monster mix-in game, which I think is like the clear like start of the week as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah.
So I think in this case, if he's choosing between Everett or Hurst, I'm just sticking with Everett. So you'd probably agree with that.
Yeah, if it involves a transaction, like if you got both of them on the bench and you want to start Hurst, cool. Like I like Everett better season long than I do Hurst. So like I'm not dropping Everett to pick up Hurst. If you got him on the same roster and you're choosing between the two, sure, go Hurst if you want, but I'm not dropping Everett to pick up Hurst.
Gotcha. Yeah. So again, we appreciate everyone who reached out with a question.
This is a pro Gerald Everett pod, baby.
Well, no, I love it. Yeah, I'm all about it. He was definitely a guy that I was looking at as like my tight end too, like in some of these like charity leagues that like Scott Fish Bowl or like Polly's playoff that where we got to use
tight ends.
That's right. So he definitely was like a firm target of mine. Did come away with him, I believe, in one spot. So I was very happy in that league, obviously. But yeah. So we just have our final 5 games here to cover. So we'll roll through these here for the Sunday later slates. We had the Falcons at the Rams. We had the Seahawks at the 49ers. So let's tackle these two. With the Rams, Cooper Kupp, obvious start. Daryl Henderson we're starting. Allen Robinson is in that group of players who really disappointed in week 1. Are you comfortable rolling with him as a flex or like a wide receiver 2 this week?
If he's on your roster, you can't not play him where you drafted him, right? Like,
sure, right.
Yeah, so you're still playing him, but unlike I think it was Darnell Mooney we talked about earlier, who was pretty good last year. Allen Robinson was not pretty good last year. The guy was pretty dismal last year, and all of us chalked it up as he quit on the team. He wants off the Bears, right? And we got 1.4 points in on opening day. So there's that little bit of doubt. Like, hold on, was he actually just mailing it in, or is he just not caring? Is it a Kenny Golladay situation? Does he just hate football now? Right? Like, what's going on here? So, if he can't get right against the Atlanta Falcons while AJ Terrell is on Cooper Kupp all game, I don't know what to tell you. So this is the week for Allen Robinson. Otherwise, you're sitting on a bag of, man, I took that guy way early, and I don't think he's going to have much of a trade market either if he lays another egg this week. So I think you're pretty much stuck with a bad draft pick if he cannot eat against the Falcons this week. Because Steve, you could potentially eat against the Falcons defense.
I don't. Maybe. I'm not so sure about that. I'm good for maybe like one play, and then I'll just be like gasping for air. But I do think it is a get right game for Allen Robinson and potentially for Matthew Stafford. They just came out looking real like just very flat, I think, against the Bills. But it was the Bills, like the great defense of the Bills. So I think Matthew Stafford, if you have him, I think
the Bills are pissed off. The Bills are going to destroy a lot of people this year. The way their season ended last year had to leave a bad taste in their mouth, and they're good enough to do some bullying. So
that's right.
I'd take some Bills laying the points when you get the chance to this year. They strike me as a team with a chip on their shoulder this season.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's a get right game for the Rams as a whole. I'm not comfortable starting Cam Akers. Tyler Higbee is a guy who's on my radar, not ready to start him just yet, unless it's like a 2 tight end situation. The Falcons, I think you mentioned about Marcus Mariota being like a super flex start.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts, you're not benching. How about like Drake London?
Yeah,
is he like a flex option for you?
Oh, yeah, he's the wide receiver 1 on the team, which again, it's not a high passing volume team, but he had what, 5 catches in his first ever game? Like, that's encouraging usage. And unlike the Garrett Wilsons and Johann Dodsons, like, he is without question the number one receiver on his team, other than Kyle Pitts, right? I mean, but at the wide receiver position, he is without question the guy,
For
So
sure.
I feel better starting him than most of the rookie wide receivers at this moment, because he's just, on a team that's so thin, he's got a huge role already. So
Gotcha. Oh, no, I'm with you. How about Cordero Patterson?
no,
So the darling of last season, not into him as a flex option for this
no.
week.
He went to Tennessee, so I love him. He's the man. But he's a borderline Hall of Fame level special teams guy for his career. But he's like a 33-year-old wide receiver that we happen to be starting at running back. It's really odd.
That's
Um,
crazy. Yeah.
with Damian Williams injured this week, so Tyler Algier was a healthy scratch this week because he's
Yep.
not a very good special teams player, and Damian Williams was going to be the backup to Patterson. Williams got hurt, and he's out this week, right? Patterson's not a guy that we really want to feature as like a bell cow back, right? I would not be surprised if Tyler Algier actually sees some work this week. We're
Okay.
gonna be getting our ass kicked, so like, why not? Let's see what he can do. He's a guy in like a GPP I'd throw if I haven't looked at it, but he's probably $3,000 or so in a GPP, on a
Yeah,
DFS
he's probably as cheap as
lineup.
they come. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
if you're looking for some variance, for a low exposed player, he's a guy that could lead the team in carries out of nowhere at the bottom of the barrel price. But yeah, I'm not going to start Patterson at all this year. To me, we saw the bottom fall out last year, right? I mean, at some point, it's just going to be a nothing burger for Patterson, and I don't want to be along for the ride.
Yeah, again, it's going up against the Rams too, who are going to be coming back with like a vengeance from that poor Week 1 game. A lot of good talent on that defensive side. So yeah, I mean, he could be in a disappointing spot for people who may be thinking about starting him, but you would say don't. So you don't
I'd
have to
start
worry
Rex
about that.
Burkhead instead.
There you go. Okay, yeah. So again, it's good to see where these lines are drawn, right? So that's a very interesting one. Um, Right, so we covered the Rams, we got the Falcons, Seahawks at 49ers. Again, the 49ers, a very bizarre game in the rain, just like with the Bears. No Elijah Mitchell. Are we flexing Jeff Wilson? No.
I'm not touching the running back room.
Gotcha.
In
So
Dynasty, get them on your roster, right? Like,
right,
grab Jordan Mason if he's still, like, get the guys on your roster, right? But do not play them. Don't
gotcha.
play them.
Perfect. Yeah, it's fine to add them and then just like
Yeah,
trade bait. You know what I mean?
don't
Just
play
get
them.
them,
Even in
and flip
redraft,
them.
if you added Jeff Wilson this week, I'm not feeling good about it. What I think happens is we're going to see Debo kind of go back to that. All right, I've got to carry the ball 8 times a game now, right?
Right.
So, which sucks for me. I actually made a bet with somebody in one of my leagues that on an under on Debo carries. I'm like, there's just no way they're going to give him that. And now with Mitchell out, I'm like, well, they kind of have no choice but to put Debo back there again. Now he's been paid for it at least. He's going to get some extra money for the carries, but
Right.
without Mitchell being injured, I thought he was going to see, maybe 3 carries a game, but now he's probably going to be back up there to 7, 8 carries a game with Mitchell out. But I'm still rolling out Trey Lance. Like I said, he's in that Bears-Niners game that gets a pass. And again, the rushing floor, you saw it with Jalen Hurts this week. 90 rushing yards can do you some good. Trey Lance is the kind of guy that can rush for 90 yards. So I'm still rolling out Trey Lance as a back end QB1. Like, I'm still starting him in redraft as, kind of back there with the Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins guys.
Yep.
Debo Samuel's still a start. George Kittle's already aggravating us this year with his every single week being on the injury report. I don't think he's going to play.
That was the one I missed from earlier. Yeah, so Kittle
Yeah.
definitely already a headache.
I'm not thrilled to play Ayuk. I'm not thrilled to
Okay.
play him.
Yep.
Now, he's definitely in the flex bucket. Like, you're gonna play him in the flex if he's on your roster. But again, we're talking about a team that you're not going to be surprised if they throw less than 20 times. And Ayuk is certainly the number 2 there after Samuel, who they just really invested in. With Kittle out, that opens up some more opportunities through the air. But I just don't feel good about investing in Niners pass catchers with Trey Lance at the helm. And that's nothing against Trey Lance. I like him in fantasy because of the rushing floor. He can run for 1,000 yards. But, I don't want much to do with his weapons. And again, Debo's production's coming on the ground, half of it. So, I don't want to rely on the beneficiaries of his passing.
For sure. Yeah. On the Seahawks side of the ball, are you still starting DK Metcalf?
No question. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The guy's a
Just
stud. Now
want to make sure. Yeah.
they were using him more like Juju on Monday Night Football, but I mean that guy is an animal out there, right? I thought he looked good. Like if he was on my football team, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy that guy's my wide receiver. Like he's just a stud,
Yep.
and like he's clearly getting volume. I'll even roll out Tyler Lockett. We know that guy's a big play waiting to happen.
Yep.
Geno Smith looked competent. I'm still rolling out Tyler Lockett in the flex. Like not like Metcalf. Metcalf is no doubt in my wide receiver spot. He's in there. I thought he was getting drafted way lower than he should have just because of the quarterback change. But I'm rolling out Metcalf and Lockett. I'm rolling out Penny. I've obviously spoke highly of him on this. I'm staying away from Noah Fant. The other tight ends had so much usage. I think the other two outscored Fant, which is crazy. They're clearly wanting to use a lot of bodies there at tight end. Fant's the most athletic one, but again, that's more of a dynasty stash type discussion on the talent end. Right now, there's just not volume that you could start. So
he just is one of these guys that just looks different. When he's catching and running with the ball, he just really stands out. But just because he looks great doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be getting the volume. I mean, we would love that, but he just
David Njoku's looked immaculate for years in his practice gear. Right? You seen that guy with the shirt off, Steve? It's pretty impressive. I think he's got less than 1,000 yards for his career. So.
Yep. Probably at less than 5% body fat.
Oh
and less
yeah,
than
he looks like a freaking statue.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That's hilarious. Yeah. So we definitely have a nice small core of players from both of these teams that we're comfortable with, and then a couple borderline guys. Then to finish off the matchups here, we got Bengals at the Cowboys, Texans, of course, at the Rex Burkhead at the Broncos.
We've been waiting to talk about Rex Burkhead this whole time.
That's right,
Steve. Let's go.
And then the Cardinals at the Raiders. So the Bengals, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, if he's active, you're starting all these guys. I'm kind of interested in Tyler Boyd if Higgins isn't able to go.
Is out?
Yeah.
Woo! Let's go, baby.
Absolutely.
Tyler Boyd's going for 100 yards if T. Higgins is out.
I like that call. Yeah, he definitely gets a tremendous boost in Higgins' absence. Joe Burrow, obviously he made up for his turnovers, trying to catch up, and then in overtime, can't always rely on that, but just the talent that he's throwing to. I'm starting him if I've got him, as long as he's healthy and everything else, which he is at this point. I did want to mention about Hayden Hurst. I think he's just an interesting tight end to keep your eye on. Maybe not quite ready to start him just yet, just below
he's
that.
He's like 30-year-old Noah Fant, just freak athlete.
That's right.
You've been excited for years, and you're just like, man, look how big and fast this guy is. He's got first-round draft capital, and it's like, he had 200 yards receiving last year, and you're like,
yeah,
look at him, he looks great.
Yep, absolutely. So I think the Bengals are pretty straightforward this week. Like I said a little bit earlier, I think Joe Mixon to me is the absolute start of the week. I think he's just going to completely dominate the Cowboys. Now, on the Cowboys side of the ball, tremendous difference from week 1 to week 2. Looking ahead here, CeeDee Lamb had a whole lot of targets and did not come in with a lot of catches, only 2, I believe it was. So very disappointing. Someone who has a lot of CeeDee Lamb, that was not fun to watch. Are we still starting him even with Cooper Rush as the quarterback?
You drafted him in the 2nd round, man. You're starting him for sure.
You kind of have no choice, right?
And here's the thing. ADP has reflected everyone that drafted CeeDee Lamb drafted him with A.J. Brown available. How are you feeling about that one through 1 week? It's just like, oh my gosh, Yep. But you can't bench Lamb, man. You took him in the 2nd round, right?
Yep.
Like you can get cute with Zeke and bench Zeke if you want to. Running back's a different animal. If you drafted a wide receiver in the 2nd round, you are rolling him out, right?
That's right.
There's no question.
And so it's like the Metcalf thing. It's like you have him, you know what he's capable of, regardless of who's throwing him the ball. I think the Cooper Rush aspect is different than the Geno Smith aspect, but still, I'm with you. You're starting Lamb.
Yeah, like running back, I don't care about the talent. Running back, all I care about is volume. If I see that Steve at Fantasy Ladder is getting 18 carries this week, he's in my lineup, right? Like, perfect. I don't care. I don't care what his 40 time is or anything like this, right? At wide receiver, all we care about is the talent, right? Like those guys are freaking studs out there. We want to play the studs. At running back, again, there's a 32-year-old white guy on the Texans that I'm rolling out this week. And, I'm sure his profile is not up there with the Jonathan Taylors and Saquon Barkleys of the world, but He's getting volume.
He's always been
Yeah.
sneaky good though. Whenever he's had opportunities, Burkhead has just always been great. But so Zeke this week, you would be prone to benching, in cases where you have ample or
He's there in the Rex Burkhead
ample.
range.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was gonna ask it, just half as a joke, but it's really not a joke at this point because
Yeah.
Burkhead has this floor of the pass catching.
I think I'd
Which
rather roll out Burkhead this week, as crazy as it sounds.
there you go.
Like,
So
what
obviously we're starting Pollard over Zeke as well, just in that same
Yeah,
offense.
I think the game script favors Pollard more. I think the Cowboys
Mhm.
are going to be down big. I'm going to try to avoid that backfield entirely,
Yeah,
if I can. But yeah, it sounds crazy. But again, that's redraft week to week type football for you, right? Like Rex Burkhead's going to outscore Zeke this week, in my opinion. It's it's going to hurt to press Rex Burkhead in there, but.
yeah.
I just think he's going to score more than Zeke. Like I said, running back is a volume game. Burkhead, I think, had 19 touches last week, and you said like 74% or something, like backfield dominator. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's
He was at 71% snaps, and Pierce
yeah,
was at 29.
yeah. Like
Yeah,
that's crazy usage, right? Like how you not going to play that usage? That's
right.
what we're looking for at the running back position. Talent really doesn't matter there because that goes into the targets thing, right? Like targets are earned, carries are scripted, right? If you're carrying the ball, they're going to hand you the ball right before the play develops. It's game plan. You're getting the carry. Like talent really doesn't matter if you're the starting running back. You're getting the carries. Like Najee Harris wasn't that great last year, but he had 350 carries. He was awesome for fantasy football. I don't care how good he was on the
Right.
field. He touched the ball 350 times, Steve. That's what I'm in on at the running
It's
back
insane.
position.
That's right.
Yeah, I
No,
don't care
I,
how
I
good you are.
think I think that's just a very just wise perspective. Again, it just takes the emotions out of it. You're just looking at this bottom line of usage. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's what you want to hang your hat on. You just
Hmm.
know the name of Zeke more than you know the name of Burkhead. But at the end of the day, who's more likely to get more touches? Who's more likely to do more with those touches? I
Hmm.
think you're right. I think at this point it may be Burkhead,
Yeah.
but it is a little sickening to press that submit
It
button.
is. And
But
that's why I
no,
love
I'm
bringing
with
up
you.
guys like Burkhead. Like, because Burkhead's
Yeah,
just one of these names that feels gross, right? But it's like, really? I'm playing him over Ezekiel Elliott, a huge name.
right.
But that's fantasy football sometimes.
That's
Todd
right.
Gurley and Le'Veon
Absolutely.
Bell aren't in the league, Steve. Who would have, like those guys are still like 27. They're not even in the league, you know?
Man,
So,
oh, it's unbelievable.
yeah.
Okay, so we got Houston Texans at the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson, Javonte Williams, Jerry Judy, Cortland Sutton. We're starting all these guys. Do you think Melvin Gordon, with the matchup, has some flex upside?
Oh, yeah. I'm starting Gordon in the flex for sure.
I like that. Okay.
That's a no-brainer for me. To me, like he's one of those prime zero RB guys. If you went zero RB, you're probably starting him at your RB2. You're certainly comfortable starting him in your flex. Those type of players are very valuable. He's in that kind of Naheem Hines bucket, right? When we're listing those backup running backs, Hunt, Hines, Gordon's probably the third one. On the backup running back rankings that you feel good about. Maybe Pollard, but he's right there with Pollard. I'd rather roll out Gordon than Pollard this week. I feel like, honestly, even
Oh,
though
gotcha.
less of a
Okay.
game script for Pollard. I think Gordon's a threat to score a touchdown every single week, and they clearly want to give him like half of the carries in the backfield. Like Javonte, God, was peppered with targets this past week in the passing game, which
That
is nice.
was really
Um,
amazing to see. Yeah.
yeah, but they want Gordon to permanently be involved on the ground. I feel like so I feel good about Gordon.
I like that. I think Alberto is definitely a good tight end to have on your radar. I mean, they really spread out like those tight end targets on
Dude,
Monday
that Andrew
night,
Beck guy was balling in the first quarter.
right?
I'm like, look at this guy, right? Like, where's
Yeah, seriously.
Alberto?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think in like these tight end premium situations, start two tight end situations, I think you're still good rolling him out or at least having him on your roster. But in single tight end, I think it would be pretty rough to get him in there unless it's like a super deep league. Now, of course, we get to the Texans. We got Davis Mills, uh, borderline super flex option as far as I'm concerned, and maybe you feel differently there. You're starting Brandon Cooks if you have him. Let's see, Rex Burkhead, right? Yeah, so we'd like Rex Burkhead
I
as a
believe
flex
I'm starting
option.
him this week, Steve. I believe I'm
Okay,
starting him.
I love it. I love it.
I'm staying
How
away
about
from Brevin Jordan and OJ Howard for sure, though. Get me out of that.
yeah, it's good. That's a real mess. Two guys who I like the potential with, but I mean OJ Howard, like 2 touchdowns on 2 catches. It's just not
Yeah. And he's
sustainable.
played for like
Uh,
every team in the league in the past year, like
yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, it's been kind of an interesting road with him because when he was starting to break out in Tampa Bay, he like gets hurt like after this like awesome like Monday night game. This is like going back a couple years, so it's been just kind of a rocky road for him. I think ever since that injury, um,
he
but
was
the
getting the
Texans.
Kyle Pitts treatment there when he was in Tampa. Like he was going in like the third, fourth round of redraft before he did
Oh
anything.
yeah, I
You
remember
know?
that. Yep.
hmm
Yeah, for sure. So where are you at with Damian Pierce? So obviously we like Burkhead because of the passing upside.
hmm
I think he definitely takes a big stumble down,
hmm
like the prospects of like a starting caliber player. I was a little bit skeptical. I always thought
hmm
he should have been drafted as like a top of bench flex option. Um, but as a teams like or as teams like RB2s, I thought that was not the way to go, even though some people were getting that way there at the end of August.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well, when they named him the starter, I took it serious. I was like, okay, wow, because like,
yeah.
believe it or not, Steve, I'm actually got pretty high exposure to Rex Burkhead.
Mm,
I've been gobbling him up all off season because I saw the possible opportunity that he was going to get some volume here, right? But once they named Pierce the starter out of camp, I was like, man, maybe the Burkhead dream is gone. I thought I was at least going to get a month out of Burkhead volume. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. Like, I'm not pumping up Burkhead as somebody that's going to win you a league. But like week to week leagues like this, we always talk about streaming. We want the points now, like this week. If Rex Burkhead's getting another 20 carries this week or 20 touches this week, I want him in my lineup, right? If he ends up getting 4 carries, 2 months from now, I don't care. He won't be in my lineup anymore at that point. If I can
right.
get 4 usable weeks out of Rex Burkhead here at the beginning of the year at 0 acquisition cost, that's a win, right? So I'm surprised that this is happening, given they anointed Pierce as the guy coming out of camp. I
Yeah.
fully expected Burkhead to be the starter coming out of camp and get a good first month like we're getting now. I'm just surprised we're still getting it after they named Pierce the starter coming out of camp.
Yeah. I think the Marlon Mack cut at the end of at the end of training camp definitely helps. But yeah, it's very fascinating. Just again, just how quickly it can change like that. But I think Burkhead just obviously just presents much more viable upside just on a weekly basis because
And he's
of
kind of
them.
game script proof as well. Even if they're getting their ass kicked, he's
That's it.
he's
Yep.
he's going to get peppered.
Yep.
So I don't really care what the game script is for the Texans. I feel good about him getting touches the whole game.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, so we got the final matchup of our discussion with the Arizona Cardinals at the Las Vegas Raiders. What was really fascinating to me about last week was just how much Devontae Adams dominated the targets. Obviously, we saw this for years in Green Bay. From what I've observed over the last several seasons with Derek Carr, they just annoyingly spread the ball around. So I
Mhm.
was like thinking, well, obviously you can't question the talent that Devontae Adams is, but is he really going to get this like insane target share that he got in Green Bay? And boy, week 1 he sure did. It was nuts. He was back to his old self. Um, is that sustainable through the season? Do you think?
Yes, that's what Devontae Adams does. Derek Carr is his college quarterback. I mean, those guys have rapport. They're best friends. I'm pretty sure Devontae Adams in Vegas bought a house right next door to Derek Carr. I mean, those guys are tight. They've got the rapport going back to Fresno State together.
Yep.
And this is all we've seen from Devontae Adams since he became the man in Green Bay. He is a target hog. He dominates out there. And Derek Carr is clearly willing to do that same thing for him that Aaron Rodgers did and let his boy Hunter Renfrow starve out there, you know. So I don't see it changing. I think Renfrow is going to have better games going forward. But I mean, if there was any question that Adams was going to not dominate the targets in Vegas, that was wrong. He's going to. Now, are we going to see Waller get more and more involved as he gets healthier and healthier? Sure. I think last year on opening day, Steve, we saw Waller get 18 or 22 targets or something like that on opening day. It was crazy,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So Waller's another one of those guys that in the right setting, gets that type of volume. But I think there was a lot of behind the scenes conversation there with Carr and Adams that, hey, if I'm leaving Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to let me eat. And I think Derek Carr is like, I got you, man. So I think we can rely on Adams. And here's the thing, Steve, if you took a wide receiver in the first round this year, Are you feeling good about Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams? Are you feeling good about your first round wide receiver right now, Steve? You're
You're
feeling
feeling
pretty good.
phenomenal.
You're
Phenomenal.
feeling great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Diggs
Especially when
too, you know.
yeah, especially when there's 0 RB studs out there like Rex Burkhead just falling into your lap. Yeah.
I might just title this show just Rex Burkhead Week 2. No,
Let's go.
I love it. So how about like Hunter Renfro? Because like to me that was a very disappointing amount of
Yeah.
usage.
I'm still flexing him. I mean, he's a
flexing him,
target
perfect.
hog. Yeah, I'm still flexing him. He's a target hog. You probably didn't draft him to be a wide receiver 2 anyway. He's probably your wide receiver 3.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still playing him there, right? I mean, he's one of these reliable flex guys that is gonna see volume. I think the low volume in week 1 was kind of an anomaly. The Raiders are a team we expect to be a good team. God, that division is stupid, Steve. Right? The Raiders, I think, are easily the worst team in that division. And in my mind, the Raiders are like a 10-11 win team,
Right.
and I think they're hands down the worst team in their own division. Like it's crazy how strong that division is. So I'm excited
Definitely.
to watch all those teams all year. But I like what the Raiders have going on with the new weapons for Carr. So.
I like it. How about Josh Jacobs? Someone who was sometimes drafted as an RB2, usually RB3. Are we rolling him out as an RB2 or flex option this week?
I think you can roll him out. I expected Amir Abdullah to get more work than he did. I don't think he got any work. I'm pretty sure he goose-egged. I also expected Zamir White to get more work than he did, and he didn't either. I'm not afraid of what 31-year-old, Brandon Bolden. Like, no. I mean, if the two guys I was concerned with were Abdullah taking all the passing work and Zamir White, honestly, eating into his early down work, and neither of those things happened. So until they do, it looks to me like Jacobs is going to get some volume in the upcoming week. So I'm going to roll him out until that changes.
I love it. On the Arizona side of the ball, Kyler Murray, you're starting. James Conner, you're starting. Marquise Brown, of course, you're starting. Zach Ertz, if he's healthy, you're starting. Any guys else in that offense that you would consider even like rostering? Like there's like talk of like Benjamin season happening, and and then like Greg Dortch like out of nowhere, AJ Green. Like, are you interested in any of these guys or not so much?
I think that one thing not that I'm interested. I think it's noteworthy that Benjamin's the backup, right? Because they brought in Daryl Williams. Benjamin's a guy that I believe was undrafted, if not he was a 7th round pick. So he's a guy they're not invested much in. And then again, they bring in Daryl Williams, who quietly had close to 200 points last year for the Chiefs, right? Pretty productive last year. So I thought for sure that was okay. Benjamin's still going to be the 3. They're bringing in Williams to replace Edmonds. That wasn't the case. Benjamin's now James Conner's predominant backup. So he's somebody we at least need to be aware of. I don't think he's worth a roster spot outside of a dynasty league right now.
Sure.
But he's one of those guys where if Conner goes down, he's going to be arguably your top waiver priority of the week because he was clearly the backup to Conner there. So put him on your radar if you got a watch list thing, whatever. But he's not – I don't think he's rosterable just yet.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and of course we are just waiting for DeAndre Hopkins to be off of his suspension, where I think he will still be targeted as a wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2 type of output. I think that is reasonable.
I think Marquise Brown is a big time ceiling play. Like I could see him just going off while Hopkins is out, having a big 2 touchdown game with like 150 yards. One of them is like a 60, 70 yarder. And again, the college report we talked about with Carr and Adams, those guys go back to Oklahoma together.
That's right.
So there's some of that rapport and the want to play together, So I think that Brown is a guy that was being a little underdrafted, even though he had pretty good ADP. He's a guy I would not be surprised if he's really having some big weeks the next coming up weeks. So
yeah, I love it. All right. Yeah, so I think we did a pretty good job covering all the games and just keeping some questionable players in mind and your obvious starters in mind. Christian, thank you so much for coming on the show, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Before we get you out of here, not that I'm in any rush to, just please remind everyone where they can find you and where they can find your content.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Evil Empire FF. You can find my written work at Fantasy Pros, and you can find my podcast on the Fantasy Authority podcast feed on Apple or Spotify. Every now and then you may see me on a TFA live show or a TFA YouTube video, but most of my work is going to be the Devy Authority podcast for the Fantasy Authority each week. That should come out on Monday mornings. every single week, reviewing the college football games from the previous week. Usually about a 15-minute long episode, quick and concise, just making sure you're not missing anything. And then my written work with Fantasy Pros during the season, we're probably looking at one article every 2 to 3 weeks. In the off seasons, where you'll see me a lot more involved, doing a ton of player profiles for the draft kit and things like that. So Twitter's where I'll post all of it. So if you're just wanting to kind of keep up with it in one spot, give me a follow on Twitter at Evil Empire FF, and you'll see all my work come through there.
I love it. Yeah, I will say just I am a regular listener of your Devy Authority show. I love it because I don't get to watch as much college football that I would like to, right? I got 2 kids, I got 2 boys, 7 and 5, so they definitely take up a lot of time. Love them to death, but outside of watching as much Penn State as I can, I don't get to watch a ton. But thankfully, you lay it all out, the most relevant players, all the highlights and stats that we would need to take in for our Devy leagues or for our upcoming
Dynasty
dynasty
rookie drafts.
drafts. Yeah, exactly. So you cover it extremely well. And like you said, just extremely concisely. So big fan of the show just inherently. So it's just phenomenal that you are coming on my show. So I
Yeah,
love it.
appreciate it, man.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you coming on, as I mentioned, and best of luck to you with all of your leagues and everyone listening, all of your leagues as well. Hopefully, we helped you try to take the emotions out of those start-sit decisions and can optimize your lineups for the best success possible. So, so again, I'm Steve at Fantasy Ladder. Christian is at Evil Empire FF. Please give us both a follow. Subscribe to the Fantasy Authority and subscribe to the IDP Guys Podcast Network. Good luck, everybody, and keep climbing.